This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and today we have an exclusive edition. We are beginning with the chair and a member of the Constitution Review Committee. They have done their work, presented their report, and the discussions have begun. But we need you to understand the process and the outcome, what went into it. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here. I'm Samson Lardy, Anyenini. Be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. So the Constitution Review Committee 2025 submitted its report to the President this week. And who are those behind this committee? Dr. Godwin Jokoto, Alhaji Ibrahim Tanko Amadou, Professor Kwame Karikari, Dr. A.C. Ansah, Charlotte A. Kesson Smith Osei, Justice Sophia O.A. Adinyira, Dr. Reina Akumparia, and chaired by Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh. Who are they? So watch your screens, and I'm trying to give you just a little, sneak peek into who they really are. H. Kwesi Prempeh obviously doesn't need any introduction. He has been the Executive Director of the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, since 2019, having previously served as its Director of Legal Policy and Governance and a founding board member from 2003 to 2015. He was a tenured professor at Seton Hall University School of Law in the USA, teaching constitutional law and corporate law courses. He has also been a visiting professor at Gimpa Law School and the Central European University, Budapest, and where he has co-taught the constitution building in Africa. Mark that, because that's the most important part I want to come to. Aside talking about he teaching constitutional law and corporate law courses, this is the central point. He co-taught taught the Constitution Building in Africa course since 2014. His international work includes serving as a constitutional advisor, mark that, constitutional advisor to the UN Special Envoy to Yemen in connection with the design and writing of a post-conflict constitution for the Middle Eastern country, consulting on constitutional reforms in South Sudan and the Gambia, and serving multiple times as a resource person to the Kenya Supreme Court on anytime you hear me say constitutional, you pause there. Constitutional and election adjudication matters. And I have a confession to make about the constitutional and election adjudication matters as far as Kenya is concerned. I'll tell you about that. How we came to Ghana doing our election petitions within 42, 45 days instead of doing it over 8 long months. Previously, he practiced as an attorney in Washington, D.C. And then he also holds a Juris Doctor from Yale School of Law, where he was notes editor of the Yale Law Journal and a Coker Fellow, teaching assistant. He also has a number of things I don't want to mention. But he served on the Ghana Law Reform Commission, Law Reform Commission from 2017 to 2024, and a couple other things. I want to welcome the chairman of the Constitution Review Committee, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, to the studio. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning, Samson. Thanks for having me.
Right. I also want to welcome Madam Charlotte Osei. She also definitely doesn't need an introduction. I'll say something briefly about her, and then I'll get Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh to try to introduce us to get to know a bit about the other members that he served on the committee with. So Charlotte Osei has over 30 years experience as a lawyer with professional expertise across the private, public, and not-for-profit sectors. She's former chair of Ghana's Electoral Commission, and before that, She was the chair of the National Commission for Civic Education, becoming the first woman to head both independent constitutional institutions or constitutional bodies. She has held several key international roles, including serving as president of the African Association of Election Authorities, vice chair of the executive board of the African Capacity Building Foundation, and a UN-appointed international elections campaigner in Afghanistan. International Elections Commissioner, not campaigner, in Afghanistan, where she helped strengthen electoral dispute resolutions. And she has also led ECOWAS election missions in Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone, and serves as a non-executive director of the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. I'll pause here. So, Prof, I will think that you would have counted yourself blessed to have these other persons serve under your committee. Dr. Osei Ansah, Professor Kwame Karakare, Alhaji Ibrahim Tanko Amidu, and Dr. Godwin Jokoto. Who are these people?
And you are right, Samson. I mean, I think I count myself really fortunate to have really had the opportunity to head a committee with this mix of individuals from various backgrounds. It really gelled together. The chemistry from the beginning was just, it's as though we had worked together before.
For the first time for many committees, we've had such gender balance. And I'm just good. It's been good.
No, I think the mix was awesome.
Great.
A mix of lawyers, non-lawyers, male, female, people from all kinds of backgrounds. And so for me, I mean, from the very beginning, it was very clear to me, I'm not prophetic, but I could tell that this would work. I mean, that the chemistry was there.
Right.
People came with a very high sense of civic mindedness. I mean, they really were committed to this project in the interest of Ghana. And it was very, very clear to me that you didn't have ideologues with a particular agenda. I tell people, look, if I had to just sit at home and write this constitution, it would look very different. So what is there is really the product of a collective effort. We deliberated, we argued, we debated, but we took on board basically what it is that we had. And, so you have people here who really just shared whatever ideological, kind of vision that they may have had individually. They shared it and came to this with a very open mind. It's an awesome group. I told when we presented the report, I had to thank the president also for just putting a committee like this together and giving me just the benefit of such awesome experience. Every one of them just came to this task with something unique, something different, perspective. So it's mostly perspective. People have served in different capacities. You would think that, for example, Justice Anyenini has had a long career in the judiciary, but also in the legal profession generally, starting from the Attorney General's department. And yet, even when matters pertaining, say, to some of the things that she had experienced, she was willing to not say, oh, no, this is my field. We didn't carve out areas so because you've worked your career in this area, everything there is sacrosanct, and then no. Everybody was willing to listen to the other point of view, change their minds if they had to. We had a rule that said, look, we're going to make the decisions collectively by consensus. Where consensus fails, we would vote. But being an even-numbered body, the chairman would have the casting vote. We didn't have to ever get there. But then we also said, if you felt strongly enough after a vote about your position, you could write a dissenting opinion, almost like a Supreme Court. Right. So we offered people the opportunity and the freedom to really be free to share their opinion. And you couldn't have gotten a better. I mean, it's not that they were opinionated, but they took this task very seriously. Every person brought something really refreshingly different to this. And I think I'm very fortunate, really.
Right.
Serious. I couldn't have asked for a better committee, you know. So at the end of it, we've all become very good buddies.
Well, you have not ended. You are still working, right?
Well, we're still working. Okay, we're still working. It's true.
Right.
Our Christmas has been somewhat compromised,
Right.
Because we still have the final report, full volume report to deliver in early January. So what this is basically a report that sums up the highlights.
You explained that to the president
Exactly.
when you were submitting it.
Sums up the highlights.
What would you like to say about the kind of people the caliber of people that you had the opportunity to work with?
Good morning, Samson.
Good morning.
Good morning, listeners. I think it was a privilege of a lifetime. Like Chrissy said, we had people from very different backgrounds. Even the lawyers among us had very different kinds of experiences that they brought on board. And everybody was very willing to listen to the other. And of course, we had camps. The abolitionists, we were like, abolish. And then we had the ones who were like, no, let's not abolish. Right. And then over time, you'll see how one view has influenced the other view. And some of the champion abolitionists became the reformers. So there was a lot of kinship. There was a lot of authenticity. Everyone was allowed to express their view. If we disagreed, we'll tell you this one day we don't agree. But generally, it was very, we were friends, really. Right. Friends, family, and everyone supported the other. So you would have maybe a non-lawyer who is struggling with understanding some constitutional concepts. And we arrange classes among ourselves to help people understand those things. And then even for us, the lawyers, there's a different thing from the text of the Constitution and people's lived experiences. And so all that came on board. So it was good. Right.
So let's begin here. On January 19, 2025.
May I add one point about hierarchy? You know, so you had people from different age cohorts, right? And in fact, it wasn't until we were on the committee that I even discovered that one of our members was actually like past almost 80 years, right? You couldn't tell from the energy that they brought to the task. But nobody pulled rank. And this was very important. No, so you had, of course, we have your usual cultural difference and these kinds of manners of dealing with people. But even those on the committee who were much older really just, related as though it was not about rank or hierarchy. And that really helped.
Great.
Because once you start these things about hierarchy,
at a point we even abolished titles.
Yes. You know. So it was really very good. I think the chemistry was just awesome.
Right. So January 19, 2025, you were appointed, and the president, his instructions to Callistus Mahama, PhD, Secretary to the President, wrote to you, and I'm looking at the terms. 1, identify and address the gaps in and the challenges with the implementation of previous constitutional review work done by the CRC and the recent Constitution Review Consultative Committee. Engage key stakeholders to solicit their views on the proposals for amendment of the Constitution. And 3, make actionable recommendations aimed at enhancing democratic governance in the country. For many of us, we thought that by these terms of reference, what you were going to do was a desk job. Yes, sit by your desk and look at the CRC's 2010 report, over 1,000 pages. That's Professor Fiajo's report. Look at Clara Berry's report, 2024. And tell us, do X, Y, Z. You were actually supposed to do it within 3 months.
Initially. Initially. I think our appointers were quite ambitious in thinking that 3 months would work. And in fact, that we immediately let them know that that was not doable. So initially we settled around like 7 months. We were appointed at the end of January, so effectively starting in February. The reason why our terms of reference could not be read the way you assumed was the parts asking us to talk to key stakeholders. And who are stakeholders when we're talking about the Constitution? But the citizens of the country. This Constitution was adopted by popular referendum in 1992. If you are going to change it in any significant way, you will have to go back to the people. Many of these things require that you go to a referendum. Some require that you go to the people's representative in Parliament. So when our understanding of key stakeholders were essentially talk to Ghanaians again, right? And in the intervening period between 2011 and now, what we also reckoned with was that a lot has happened. A lot of water has gone under the bridge. As of 2011, we had not even had a single election petition. In the period since then, we've had 2.
Correct.
As of the time the report was presented, we had not had the experience of even a president dying in office and triggering the processes for succession. We've had that experience. These are all constitutionally significant developments, right? We had not had a hung parliament. We have since had one, and how it affects governance. We have never experienced, sovereign bankruptcy. We've had one. There are provisions on finance in the Constitution that would be impacted by that experience. Provisions on... So a number of experiences, and even in our region...
Cataclysmic experience,
in our
so
region,
to speak.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And look at what's happening in our region. The return of coup d'etat, right? It's something in the background, but if you follow the chatter around it, if you follow the youth reaction to these things, democracy is on the ropes again in the region.
There's been the discussions about democracy backsliding.
Yes, so you have to take on board these developments that have happened since the first big report came. And then, of course, a new generation of, when that report came, I think we're calling them millennials. Now we call them Gen Z, right? This is a new communities of, citizen activists using social media in very different ways to engage. So you cannot disregard these intervening developments and say, we're just going to lift this off the shelf and just sit down and read and harmonize and that kind of stuff. So we read our terms of reference, and without disagreement from our appointers, actually, because we did go back and say, look, you've been talking about a national constitutional conference. What exactly do you mean by that? And this is our understanding of it. This is how we think we will proceed to do that national engagement. And they said, fine, that's actually consistent with our thinking. So we didn't really stray from our terms of reference. Where we needed clarity, we went back to our clients and said, are we aligned on this one? This is how we are proceeding. And
the National Constitutional Conference will suggest to me that your appointer had in mind, of course, the first of the terms is look at the previous work that's been done. So your appointer had in mind, we need you to aggregate. The work is almost done. Just bring people together to one conference and sort of validate, and let's move on.
That's one interpretation. The other, which we offered was, look, we want to disaggregate this national conference into a series of zonal engagements instead of bringing, citizens to Accra, which would mean essentially an assemblage of elites again. We would rather go to where the citizens are and engage them as the national conference, right? So we disaggregated the national conference into 10 zonal meetings. And we said, this is our approach. Is it aligned with your thinking? He says, absolutely. That's fine. That's one way of getting to the same end.
Okay.
So that's how we actually managed our terms of reference on that particular issue.
Maybe we should continue on the, consultative process. The question is, why did you have to go back and do something that has already been done and we have spent, as it were, millions doing already? As far as the Prosecution Committee's report is concerned, we know that we spent close to 6 million or so to get it done. I'll check the figures again, but it's even more than that.
Okay.
Tell us about these consultations. Did they reveal anything new?
I think, first of all, we should commend ourselves as a country that we have actually made time to discuss our...
And for those of you watching, we are going to be showing you some of these pictures. This is a consultation, I think, with Chairman Sabonsu and his team. And then you see several others with President Kufuor, other very important, significant persons. And then the zonal ones across the country, 10 of them, you see members. And some of you will see yourselves because you were there. I was there, but I'm not in any of the pictures.
Oh, we'll dig up yours.
All right.
We have to commend ourselves as a country that we have made time, this is the third one, to have conversations around our constitution. Is it working for us? What can we change? What can we do better? And we're not doing this in a time of crisis. Most countries have constitutional conversations, reform proposals out of crisis.
Like Kenya had to do.
Yes, war, civic crisis, uprising, failed elections, whatever. Ghana, we've done amazing that all the time we've had these conversations, which are really critical, it is during a time of peace. And so it is very authentic and people feel free to speak their mind about the Constitution. We also have to remember that this is about democratic legitimacy. The Constitution is the lived experiences of us as a people. And how are we ever going to have discussions about reform in the Constitution and not involve everyone as much as possible? I think it's really important for the legitimacy and to understand the lived experience of people. One of the things we discovered during the zonal engagements in particular, the expert thematic sessions were
what you're seeing now was your engagement with the National House of Chiefs.
Yeah.
Okay, very important. Yes,
the expert thematic sessions were very illuminating even for us because you dealt with experts who had spent a lot of their lives working on these areas, whether it is lands and natural resources, local government, chieftaincy, whatever. So you could actually talk to them about what the challenges were, stolen lands. So we got a very good understanding of the issues and the way forward. But the zonal engagements were mind-blowing. Because you see, if you go to Takrady, the issues that they are going to raise there are very different from the issues in Bolgatanga or Siani. These are the lived experiences of the people.
Right.
And yes,
Constitutions are supposed to embody our aspirations.
Exactly.
Okay.
So whether it is the Brodia Hima who is telling you about her challenges in the market, yes, it is a problem that should be addressed by the local government, not by the Constitution. But we need to ask ourselves, why are people using this fora to bring up issues with challenges with seeing their MPs, markets not being built, children out of school, issues around teenage pregnancy, and find a way to address this without leaving the constitutional framework you're supposed to redesign, but to find a way to make sure that in that framework, whether it is at the local government level or at the executive level or judiciary, these issues are addressed. I have been a lawyer for 31 years. I was shocked to find out that members of the lower bench are not part of the judiciary and are treated so differently. If we did not have these engagements and open the doors for people to bring submissions, come and speak, and we had people who practically became 9th members of the commission.
Yes.
Honorable Ayiko. Yes, and it was beautiful for us to have.
The day I appeared, there was somebody who said that
the One Ghana movement
that's
people.
Who he had become, right?
They were with us, and it was good because even when others came to share their perspectives, they also could make an input. So that kind of environment, for me, it was the biggest takeaway here.
But was there not a bit of a negative to that, to allow Ayiko to sit in throughout when people are only coming?
It wasn't to allow.
People are only coming and leaving.
We didn't say they should leave. It was open. If you wanted to come in and sit every day, it was open to you.
Okay.
And for me, beyond, people talk about the political acceptability. Yes, this is a part of it. Young unknown parties being able to come and sit there and share their views. They may not get all the things they wanted in their submissions,
right.
But I think that the opportunity to be heard, to express your views as a citizen of Ghana, market woman, we had students, we even had people come and speak as members of security services and say, I'm speaking as an individual.
Right.
We had chiefs, we had queen mothers. I think that for me was the most important aspect of this. And for me, it hits head on the nail on the what? Which one is it?
Right.
About democratic legitimacy and the fact that people must be involved in this process. Otherwise, it's meaningless for me.
And as the pictures are, rolling, I'm seeing very lively encounters. Your encounter with the judiciary, I saw Justice Eric Che Bafo in a very active, you can tell, very animated fashion.
I wanted to add to that the very interesting distinction that Charlotte draws between the zonal engagements and the what she called the experts. Right? So these are the Accra engagements that we had with, as she described, those who have engaged the Constitution as experts, as public officials, as leaders, president, and the like. And then stepping outside of Accra to engage the people in the community. One interesting observation we made was, and it's not to say, they each brought different values and attributes to the process, right? Yeah. So the Accra engagements, as Charlotte has mentioned, really expanded our knowledge of the workings of the system from people in the inside who have worked it. So they would tell you.
You meet them as a whole, or you met majority, minority? Because I see the pictures, you with the minority.
We met majority separately. We met the speaker separately.
That's President Kufuor there.
Yes, right. Yes, it was a very good engagement. Absolutely great engagement, right? And then when you step outside of Accra, you see people are freed of. They don't see them. They see themselves in the Constitution as either victims or beneficiaries. They are not power players in the game. Right? So I thought that they were freer to express their frustration with the system.
I'm looking at your engagement with Dr. Baumia in his office.
In his office, absolutely.
So what would be the capacity at which you go to him? Would you do the same thing for all other parties?
No, so wait. We had to engage former presidents, so that left
former
us with
vice president. I get it.
President Akufo-Addo and President Kufuor. Then there are peculiar issues in the Constitution around the office of the vice president. And we said the current vice president has just come into office. There's only one former vice president. How did he find functioning in that office without a defined job description, a defined budget? What were the challenges? What would you like to? That perspective was important, we felt, for us to listen to. We spoke to former speakers. Yes. We spoke to the current speaker. So we tried to make it as broad as possible.
So you did what has been done, except the milieu has changed. Like you said, a lot of things have happened since the Fiajo report.
Yes.
And a couple other things have happened since the Clara Berry report. Right.
Maybe not so much Clara's. I think most of the changes were between the 2011 report and this one. But remember, even in the zonal engagements, the questions that people came up with were surprising. A lot of people were upset about Parliament, Supreme Court decisions they did not understand. And in fact, I remember at one, they said, if people should put it in there. We don't want anything to go to the Supreme Court again. When is a parliamentary seat declared vacant, put it in the Constitution. We're like, but the Supreme Court will always have to interpret. But that's how frustrated people were. Article 146 came up strongly. From me, the poster girl, to the former Auditor General. And then, of course, we're dealing with CJ Tokonu's issue at the time.
Article 146, popular now, removal
very
of
popular. People
heads of independent constitutional bodies.
People were very unhappy about how that had played out, rightly or wrongly. But these perceptions have to be managed as much as it's not just the law has.
For that, you have a lived experience, the most unfortunate one. So you also bring it to bear to the committee.
Yes.
Let me answer that for
private in a very private sitting with the committee. I shared my.
We were very glad that we had on the committee people who had public service experience within the constitutional framework. Professor Kakari had served on the National Media Commission, had been Director General or CEO of Ghana Broadcasting at some point. Justice Adingra obviously served through almost all the layers of the Superior Court. And then, of course, Ms. Osei was also, by virtue of her experience, NCCE, EC, you know, and the most famous or infamous Article 46 experience, you know, that she had. So we really benefited from the insights and first-hand experience of these persons. And definitely when we got to 146, she had to give us her sense of how exactly it had unfolded under her her tenure and her own experiences. You know, so it was very good to have at least 3 members on the committee who had had experience with constitutional bodies from the inside, and that first-hand experience was invaluable.
Right. And for those of us in the media, we're super excited because you couldn't. We felt protected that Professor Karkari was there. But I discovered, appearing before the committee, that we could not take that assurance, that because you have one of you there means that your concerns will be fully catered for.
Yeah, because we were not chosen to represent interest or institutions. This is not a body where...
Why is he talking only about his media side?
Of
How about the other side? The Ghana bar?
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Right. No, I mean, it's. I think, you know, constitutional commissions have different formats in terms of representation. Some are chosen to represent particular interests, and you get a different dynamic. So if we said, okay, let's put up this body, CPP bring 1, MPP bring 2, NDC, it would have been a different committee, right? And then there's this other approach, you know, or you could have, say, different institutions bring in. You tend to do that with consultative assemblies and constituent assemblies and the like. I think this one, it's funny, I was having a conversation with somebody from the Zambia who are going through a similar experience, and they had me on to engage on the Ghana experience. Then when I described how we were chosen, they're like, and it's okay in Ghana. Everything is quiet. There will be war here.
You told that story that you simply had a call from the Attorney General.
Yeah,
and then the process just started.
It doesn't work that way. You know, and like Charlotte is saying, we have the unique privilege of doing these things in peacetime. I mean, my experience in Yemen was after the Arab Spring. That's when you are doing constitution. It's a totally different environment. Yeah. The stakes are very different. The interests are very concretized, you know, and everybody knows and has positioned themselves what they are going to look like after the constitution. Where am I going to be? What power will I have? What power will my group have? So the dynamics are very different. And we have this privilege of doing these things when there is peace. So and that's a very awesome experience.
Someone would say you give yourself too much work. Exactly. Because there is what you call the analysis paralysis or review fatigue. That people have gone through this over and again, and you have the opportunity to just, you know, sit and write 1, 2, 3 and say, these are actionable things, move on.
But even the CRC,
go back to the people,
even the CRC
go
also
over
have
again
came to different conclusions on some issues with CRC 1.
That's right.
And the approach also yields different results. CRCC did almost like a clause-by-clause review.
That's right.
We didn't understand our charge to be that. So we said we're going to, you know, the request for actionable recommendations told us, well, we're supposed to just be selective, look at problem areas, and then find solutions to problems. So we took a problem-solving approach. We were not doing a holistic review of the Constitution clause by clause, which would have yielded a completely different outcome. So but I do think the point needs to be made that it was not possible, seriously, to just take the 2011 report and just sit home, distribute the chapters, and do a desk review. I don't know how that would have looked like.
But we actually started with that.
But this is, of course, we did desk review.
So I have a sense of the areas that there was some coincidence, as far as the previous report are concerned, and your report is also concerned, where there were agreements and a bit of, call it, change, innovation. Can you share with us what are some of the things you can report to us that you relied on the previous report?
I wouldn't say relied on. We have like a 100-page document where we actually took clause by clause all the recommendations they made. What were the recommendations from Clara's committee? We tallied that. And then we had a column for ours. So we started with a sense of, this is the history. We're going to look at the history, but we'll also speak to the public, get feedback, and decide, are we going with this or it's a new path?
Right.
So it wasn't the sense of relying on. Where we found merit in what work had been done, of course we picked it. So for instance, issues around Article 71 have been in all those reports.
Yeah.
Did we endorse their findings and their recommendations? Sort of, to the extent that we agree that there's a problem with this every 4 years, twinkling with this and trying to, tinkering with this and trying to change it. But we decided that would go the way of a one-stop public emoluments commission, which we would carry also the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, yes, in there to deal with this holistically and address ex gratia and all the things people have issues with, and have a system that is fair to all and makes sense, rather than picking and saying, stop ex gratia, don't do this, stop the Presidential Emoluments Committee every 4 years.
But that's the change that we were expecting, because that had become the popular song. CRC says, Emoluments Commission. CRCC says, some committee to do some of these things. Then you come at a point where even some politicians have said, we're going to scrap it. Then you say, Emoluments Commission. So what has changed?
Because that Emoluments Commission needs to do a deep dive.
Absolutely.
It's not based on what people feel. If I'm a member of parliament and I work 4 years and I'm out, what should I be getting? Vis-a-vis the judiciary, vis-a-vis the executive. It's not just picking one and saying, scrap this. When you scrap it, then what? We were very mindful not to create new problems while trying to solve existing problems. There is nothing wrong with having a salaries emoluments commission that looks at this entire thing holistically and would get to the point of saying, I'm scrapping ex gratia, exactly. But what am I putting there?
Exactly.
We may not have the skills to set emoluments. So why don't you give it to the experts? It's like local government. Every committee that has been set up to look at the Constitution has issues with local government.
So, Prof.
No, let me just finish this, please.
Okay.
Chiefs have issues with local government. One of the things we discovered was in some communities, there's a complete absence of government. There is no, we forget that district assemblies are in district capitals. Beyond those capitals, the villages, there's no government presence. Only government presence may be a school. NADMO doesn't get there. So we have a helicopter crash and there's no NADMO present in that village. So what is the authority figure in that village? It is the chiefs. How do we ensure that at every level, people have access to government? We sit in Accra and we assume that the way it is in Accra is the way it is everywhere. It's unfair. So why don't we have a devolution commission? Take all the local government bodies, district assemblies common fund, the interministerial coordinating, whatever, all of them, put them here, decide on all these things once and for all and manage it, rather than these disparate bodies managing this and everybody, and there's so much confusion that we don't even know what they're doing.
So on substance, once again, continue from there.
Yes.
You guys have deferred things that you were expecting you to conclusively deal with.
Like?
Scrap 71 payments. Have you scrapped, or you have done what takes us closer to scrapping? Election of district assemblies, what do you call MMDCEs?
Scrapping properly.
That one too, you say devolution commission. We know the research. It says we want them elected. You say phased-in approach. Have you deferred, or you've done the job?
I think we're just being honest, right, about about a lot of things, including the limits of our competence, which she just said, right? So you can, in a 10-month or 11-month process or 8-month engagement, you can say, well, we're going to elect everybody tomorrow. And in fact, until this committee, I was very much in favor of the 2019 referendum proposal to elect MMDC everywhere. Now stepping back, getting close to looking at the issue, there was only one issue on that campaign: let's elect. Right? Now, as you then pry open,
let's elect on partisan basis.
Yes, let's elect on partisan basis, and then you get close to it.
Engage the people.
You get the people, and you're like, You know, so I think we are in Takoradi, and somebody says, look, I'm coming from Takwa. If you guys do this election immediately, my whole area, only the Galamsey people will win, right? It gives you pause, right? And when you say, okay, let's take on board, it's a huge challenge. When you elect, when you appoint and you remove or a DC is removed or passes on, it's easy, you appoint again. But when you elect and a DC passes on, who succeeds? So there is no deputy DCE. Who is the DCE going to govern the district with? Is this just the DCE going to do everything? Does the DCE have a district cabinet? How does that look like?
What are the checks on his powers?
You know, how a lot of secondary questions come up. Immediately you open, you're like, oh, okay, this is... And then the issue of 261 districts. We travel the country, including, you know, by road. And as she says, some places, they are very ungoverned.
That's right.
You don't, in some of these areas, you don't even have markets in the district from which a district assembly could collect tolls. Yeah. You are going to elect. The districts are supposed to be the drivers of development at the subnational level. What are they driving the development with if you don't have market tolls, if you don't have property rate base? So all of these questions, it's not an on and off switch one time, right? We realize that, look, devolution is a long process, never-ending process. You tweak, you go. So rather than this one committee pretending, I mean, with a time-bound, you know, terms of reference, pretending to know everything about local government and devolution and making a one-time, giving a one-time answer to a big question. Say, elect everywhere and let's get on with our business. We said, no. We've looked at the evidence, we've spoken to people, we've talked to the experts, and we think that a phased-in approach makes more sense. Why don't you bring in a devolution committee that has a blend of competences and expertise in this area, and then they would actually run this on a continuing basis. And we were actually also really delighted to know that this is not something that's new to us, that even in some of the more seasoned democracies, devolution, giving the local people the right to choose their mayors, is actually an evolutionary process. In the UK, I mean, London elects, but not every other city elects, maybe not Bristol, not Manchester, or if they do, they elect differently. So even in those countries that have been doing democracy for a long time, when it came to the issue of devolving from the center to the local, they have chosen a phased-in approach, right? So some of those decisions, we could have just said, yeah, we know everything. I mean, we can just say abolish, you know. Article 71 just says that there's an ad hoc committee that comes and goes. So we have so many of those committee reports. And we're saying, rather than just use that approach, why not have a standing commission that takes on board, builds institutional knowledge about this matter, takes on board everything about the emoluments in the public services and public sector,
not
and
only
harmonizes.
for Vice President,
no.
Because part of the grievances,
everybody.
Part of the grievance is this is inequitable, it's discriminatory. Why are you just carving out these people and saying that their salaries and things must be done differently and opaquely sometimes? People don't even see the details. And we say, look, fine, then let's have a standing commission, general purpose, look at the public sector and harmonizes everything, including, just like you said, if they don't think that gratuity or ex gratia, as we call it, is something we need to do every 4 years, they would come out and abolish it if people want it abolished. But then once you pry open the issue, you realize, okay, so there are public careers that end with a pension. MPs don't have a pension scheme. So this has become like a substitute pension scheme. Must we not develop?
Did it occur to you that fair wages can take care of this job?
But they recommended fair wages.
They sent a memo and said we can do this job.
Okay.
So what we are saying is that we are not creating a brand new commission here. Just turn the fair wages
into this.
Into that. Expand their mandate and everything. But they've told us in their memo they can do this job.
Good.
So that's exactly what we're doing. And
can I just add something on the local government elections? you know, we all started with different views. Should there be elections? Should it be appointed? If election, should it be partisan? Should it be non-partisan? But it was very interesting going round the zonal engagements, and most people saying that we don't want partisan elections. It is too, almost like it's too traumatic every 4 years, doing it at the presidential and parliamentary level. We don't want that kind of tension associated with local government elections, and so would rather have it non-partisan. We had to agree to that because it's what the people wanted.
So we will have a little chat around the implementations, potential implementation bottlenecks.
Okay.
That's where we are getting to now. My guest right here helping us to understand this process. The chair of the Constitution Review Committee and a member of the committee, Charlotte Osei, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh too is here. So back to you, Chair Osei. We, as usual, are expecting a white paper. And the thing that Ghanaians get angry about is that the white paper will cherry pick. If your reports represent the collective will of Ghanaians, you've gone around the country, you've spoken to experts, you've spoken to everybody who must be spoken to, then you present a report. This is what the people say they want. Then we have an executive that issues a white paper and say, oh, we endorse A, we do not like B, we do not like C. Are you worried about that?
This issue has come up several times during our deliberations, and I'm going to speak my position, not the position of the committee. I'll leave the position of the committee to the chair. My position has always been simple. Our terms of reference did not talk about implementation. Our job was to look at the work that had been done, solicit the views of the people who own the Constitution to tell us what they want to see in the Constitution and present those views. That is what we have done. Now, if the executive wants to cherry pick, that would be a big problem for the executive because we have essentially told you this is what the people of Ghana want. You may question, debate, challenge our approach, whether is your outcome the legitimate voice of the people of Ghana. I can understand that. But to ignore it, major recommendations, you would be facing a lot of civil society opposition. I don't think they want that. But I think I should also start by saying that we have to commend the president because immediately we submitted our recommendations, he immediately instructed right there that it should be released to the public. So everybody now has a chance to see the recommendations, debate it, and if the citizens really like our recommendations, then it is for the citizens to fight for those recommendations to be implemented.
The president is privy to the recommendations and he says they are revolutionary. And you said they are radical. Many have also said so. At the beginning, when we're talking about the process questioning, you were concerned about what you said, legitimacy. Now you have brought in the people.
Yeah.
What legitimacy again? Because sovereignty resides in the people, it springs from the people, and you've gone to the people and they say, this is what we want.
Yes.
So, Prof, are there any, sort of legal safeguards to ensure that the most radical recommendations aren't simply ignored by the executive?
Interestingly, the president never mentioned which provisions or recommendations he considers radical or revolutionary. But I think, to continue from where Charlotte left off, I mean, basically, it's the ball is in their court, right? The process from here on is political. Political in the sense that it has to go through a democratic process. The people's voice would be there. The parliament is a gatekeeper in this process. The parliamentarians will have their say, and all of that will be ongoing. I think I agree with Charlotte that if I were to advise, I don't think a white paper is necessary in this case, right? In the sense that the process is political, it can take on any objections you have, right? If you have problems with particular recommendations, let's process it through this.
Engage.
And let it be through engagement and dialogue, right? Let your view be part of the conversation, as opposed to, signaling that you object openly to this. Let it be part of a dialogue. From here on, it's a dialogue, right? It's not even just a dialogue in terms of two sides. There are multiple sides here. Let's put everything together and debate them and have a conversation around them. The executive's viewpoint included, whether as an executive, whether as a party, whether it should all be in the mix. And then
why should it be such a never-ending process? So we are here and we're referring back to 2010 when we began this process. Why don't we come to a point where once you are done with your job, we tell ourselves we are done. This is where we have come from. We are done. Because even the process of amendment, some say this is the only and perhaps the only opportunity to get this done because of the way Parliament is also structured and so on and so forth. So if we have to continue with, we have to debate, when are we ever going to get this done?
I think we're also ignoring the fact that there are different interests being carried along. So let's take Article 78. It was one of the almost unanimous viewpoints across every region, across key stakeholders, that we want a strict separation, Parliament and the executive. If I've elected my member of Parliament to go to and represent me, I want him to be focused on the job of representing me and giving executive oversight. Within us in the committee, we had differing views. It was a spectrum of views. Some strictly for it, but it was the voice of the people was overwhelming. This is what we want. For me, to be interesting to see how Parliament takes that. Whether people say, I do not want a member of Parliament to be a Minister of State, a Deputy Minister of State, or even be on a board, stay in Parliament. Now, you, I'm sure, may agree with that. How is Parliament going to play this out? That's a key stakeholder in this process. So it's not just the executive. We're focused on executive cherry picking. How about Parliament cherry picking? Yeah. So it will be. That's why we think that at the end of the day, dialogue.
I was only not a member, but I was almost like a member of the 2024 process, and there was unanimity. There was consensus at the workshops that were held. There were about 2-3 major workshops that were held. Yeah. There was one in Parliament. I don't recall if the MPs were in agreement, but even the final one, there was such unanimity. What's the name? Samokujeto, all these colossus of constitutional legal minds were all there, and they agreed. Safoseni, the rest of them were there. So why do we belabor it again? Why do we say executive should have the opportunity of share their view and engage any further? Because even if you're going to do the amendments, the gazetting process, that alone about 6 months to engage in. So when are we going to get this done? Off the table.
That's your problem as civil society.
I want this done now.
Not the committee. But look, even something as simple as capping the number of ministers.
Yes.
We were surprised across political divide, except for 1 or 2 voices that had a different opinion. Okay. People felt we should cap the number of ministers, cap the number of Supreme Court judges. That came up even at the zonal engagement level. But now it would be important, I think, if I were the executive, to sit with the judiciary and say, look, Supreme Court, they want your numbers capped. How does this affect your work? The committee feels that if you filter what comes to you through the appellate system, you can reduce your workload without any significant damage to the judiciary system. And then we can cap the number. How does that? If I were the executive, I would not just say a committee has made recommendations and so I'm going to just... I would also make some engagements. Devolution Commission, I'd like to make some engagements before I now say this is, we are going with this.
So right. And we did also fair. The executive.
So if you are watching these pictures, don't be confused. This was President Akufo-Addo receiving through Chairman Sabonso, whose ministry set up the Clarberry Committee, the Constitution Review Consultative Committee that also presented its report. And remember, the President Akufo-Addo handed that report to President Mahama.
Sure.
And together with the Fiajo 1,000-page committee work, commission work, that was also attended to.
Ours will be smaller.
Are you thinking about how the process eventually would terminate? And are you willing to accept, as the President has given an indication, to be part of the implementation committee?
Sure. I mean, yes, we definitely took on board. I mean, we were very concerned not to see the process hit a roadblock, the same roadblock that 2011 hit. Because people talk about 2011 as though the only reason why it remained on the shelf was political will. No, there was a technical problem, right? How do you process within our amendment framework in the Constitution? How do you process more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 changes to entrenched clauses?
There were in excess of 40
Absolutely.
amendments to the entrenched clauses.
So if you want to amend the entrenched clauses, you go to a referendum, gather at the minimum 40% of voters to show up, and of those showing up, 75% must vote to approve.
Yeah.
And this is where the technical hitch comes. You cannot put together multiple questions and ask for one yes or no answer. So if you say, I want to abolish the death penalty, and I want to put a cap on the number of ministers, these are totally unrelated issues. You can't couple them and say to voters, do you approve? What are they approving? So it got to a point where there was a technical hitch. You had to separate out the various provisions for amendment. Right?
I always wondered what my ballot paper.
That's why some people say a new constitution rots. That solves all of this.
Yeah, but how do you, with the amendment framework, and I think what we have proposed gets us close to that, right? So we had a lot of worry about it. It's like, I mean, at some point we said, well, it's not our job. But then we also reckon that we don't want to have wasted our time. So let's find it. And this is what we came up with, right? That when you look at the Constitution's amendment provisions, there are so many of them. Right? Some whole chapters are entrenched.
Yes.
And you ask yourself, was it really the intention to entrench the entire executive chapter, including NDPC and everything? Or are there some sacred cows that we think no regime, no party should just be able to come and single-handedly change? So clearly, term limits, we said, well, it appears that Ghanaians take term limits to be sacrosanct.
Yeah.
We want to entrench term limits. But we want to be free to figure out if we want ministers from parliament or not parliament. How significant is that we want to entrench?
You take a breather, we'll return, and that's an innovation they are bringing on the amendment chapter, how to amend the Constitution, even introducing a popular approach to amending the Constitution. And you've been listening to Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, Chairman, Constitution Review Committee, and Charlotte Osei, who is a member of the Constitution Review Committee. I'm taking a quick break. When we return, they are still here, and they're going to take your questions. Some of your questions will be filtered through Victoria Bright, international corporate lawyer and entrepreneur, Oliver Barker-Vormawor, constitutional rights and policy strategy advisor, Democracy Hub. And remember, Oliver is important in this discussion because he was one of those doing the heavy lifting job as far as the Constitution Review Commission's work, Professor Fiajo's work was concerned. Professor Bafwa Jimandua is former UN Senior Governance Advisor. Inus Afuseni is former MP, Tamale Central, and former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. Nana Ajay Bafwa, he's been reading the document and he's coming with his view, having reviewed it. He's Vice Chair, Subsidiary Legislation Committee, and member Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament. You'd have seen him in those pictures also engaging with the Constitution Review Committee. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. If you're just joining us, we have an exclusive today. So we started the show at 8 a.m. Now we will continue from here. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And thanks for the messages that are coming in so far, including the very tough and thought-provoking questions that are already coming in. I would like first to read a recommendation that is coming in from Jonathan. He says the recommendations from the CRC is our second independence. It will change the way we do politics forever and truly position the country for development. Media must form a strong coalition behind it and get the whole country behind it. I think the media should avoid talking to those who have nothing useful to contribute to this process. If we can get together on this, we are setting to put the country back on the path of development. The show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN. Everywhere you go, Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today's Syntax stance. It's strong, it's tough. Activa International Insurance, our clients, our passion. International Facilities Management Association. They are proud to be associated with Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis platform. Safari Valley Eco Park, that's the place you should be these holidays, bringing you closer to nature. Gold Board Jewelry, pure, precious, proudly Ghanaian, and Koa Natural Juice, 100% cocoa fruit juice. Thank you very much. So you've already met the chairperson of the Constitution Review Committee, the chairman, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh. You've also met Charlotte Osei, who is a member of the committee, and they've been helping us with the process question. We've been trying to understand the process and the outcome. And I'm happy that my guests who are joining us are saying they are excited the way we began the whole program. Tell you something. It's like a joke, but serious. When the report was presented, I had a media house call, a lawyer of significance. And they asked the man a question. What do you make of the report that has been submitted? He says, oh, they just submitted it. I'm yet to see, to read. Then he began criticizing the report. He began criticizing the report he hadn't seen. And my other guests, as I introduced you earlier, Victoria Bright, international corporate lawyer and entrepreneur, Oliver Bakavomo, constitutional rights and policy strategy advisor, Democracy Hub, Professor Bafwa Jumendua is former UN senior governance advisor, Inus Afuseni is former MP Tamale Central and former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Nana Ejay Bafwewa is vice chair, Subsidiary Legislation Committee, and member of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament. Now, the process, call it, are they the owners? I'm not too sure, but those who have driven the process are still here. And for the first hour, what we are going to do is to give our guests the opportunity to raise their most consequential issues and give them the opportunity to explain if they have to explain to them. So maybe I'll begin with Inus Afuseni. In this process, what are the most important for you? What are most important for you of the issues that have been brought, that have come up, and what is it that you would like to hear from the chair or a member of the committee?
Samson, thank you so very much. I came in late. I thought that you would give me the opportunity to sit down and rest. But be as it may, let me comment the committee. I had the opportunity to appear before them. The seriousness with which they approach the tax given them. The fact that they were accommodating, even if we spoke nonsense, they pretended to be interested in our and then they have produced a report that is very novel and far-reaching. Might have very important consequences for our democracy. looks like it's trying to transfer power directly to the people or manifest the people's power at the grassroots. Almost everything we have seen before. I mean, even though I'm not persuaded by 2 or 3 things, but almost everything that is contained in the report we have seen before. You remember on this platform, 3 of us presented our case for constitutional review. And if you go and look at my paper, my case for constitutional review, most of the things contained in the report are in it. Now, so there's somehow some broad consensus that we need, and like you took the inspiration from the first attempt at constitutional review to move our constitution from a political constitution to a development constitution.
That was the Fiajo report. So they say they are transforming Ghana and from an electoral democracy to developmental democracy.
And to be able to do that, you need to tweak certain processes, certain institutions. I mean, to get to that. You know, I always say that the promise in our Constitution, and particularly the directive principle, no, not directive, the preamble of the Constitution, the promise of equality of opportunity, I mean, can never be delivered if the institutions that have been created to support the delivery of that promise are weak and not fit for purpose. And I see what they're trying to do is to make those institutions responsible and accountable. I mean, that require that we, the people of Ghana, become good citizens, invest in the process, contribute to making it a reality so that we can live under the benefit and promise of the Constitution. It's very important. And again, let me say that when I read that the MPP had formed a committee to look at the recommendations, I was encouraged. Because again, you are seeing that it appears to me that what we had always hoped for is coming to pass. That we have a bipartisan consensus on what should be done to our Constitution. Because, you know, that was what afflicted Chairman Sebunsu's Constitutional Review Consultative Committee. We had told him that the driver of a constitutional review exercise should be the executive. But under Nana Akufo-Addo, it appeared that he was patently uninterested in the process. Of course, I mean, and he manifested his position in his last State of the Nation address, or so, when he said that we should hasten slowly on the review of the Constitution. And so, even though Clara...
But Chairman Sir was serving at the pleasure of Akufo-Addo. And eventually when the report was done, and I know because you were part of it from beginning to end through to the consultations in Parliament and to going out of Accra, you were part of the process. And on the day of the presentation, he still did not hide his reservations about this attempt at a holistic, review, like change the whole constitution. But he took the report and then he submitted it to President Mahama and said, this is work to be done. So he ought to be commended for that.
Yes. I'm not commending for that. But you didn't show, he was not overly enthusiastic in that whole exercise. And that was our problem. I mean, you were there too. That was our problem.
That's correct.
Baka, you were there. That was our problem. So we were always battling. I remember Baka saying that the Supreme Court decisions should guide our approach to this exercise, and that it is within the preserve of Parliament to do those changes. This was the debate.
So this committee has partly answered that question, even though it was driven by the executive, and the Supreme Court has confirmed in the suit Professor Azar took against the Fiajo report that the executive can initiate it. They still said, even though we've been given this job and we can call a conference and go ahead with it, we want legitimacy. So they still went across the country and brought all who needed to be heard on the matter.
When I was listening to Prof. and
Charlotte,
and I said, oh, that was a very good interpretation of the your instrument of appointment. That look, when you said engage stakeholders, who are the stakeholders, the people of Ghana, and so you needed to be added them with your appointors. When you went back and told them, look, this exercise will entail consulting with the people of Ghana, and you were given the go-ahead. I mean, that was a brilliant one and a smart one. Yes, but I have reservations. The first reservation, I'm not entirely convinced that we need to extend the term of the presidency. Now, and it's not new. Your suggestion, recommendation is not new. The first time it made it into our national discourse when it was on the 5th day of January 2009, when His Excellency John Agyekum Kufuor delivered his final State of the Nation address to Parliament. He cited Singapore and Malaysia. He said because of the long stay, the duration of governance, that's why probably that catalyzed the growth of and development of their countries. And he also, in informal discussions during the Constitution Review Consultative Committee, said that it takes about a year to form a government. To settle. And then in the last year of your tenure or 4-year tenure, you have to go campaign, especially if you are due for re-election. And so effectively you have 2 years. And he felt that 2 years is not just enough to develop a country and put in place all your policies. I said, well, that's a good explanation. But why don't we inject efficiency into the way we govern?
Get a lot more practical with us, because we're hearing people who are saying they are not for an extension from 4 to 5 years. Dr. Nyaho Tamakolo just issued a statement joining, those who are against the 5 years. I want to hear why not 5 years. We know the reasons for the 5 years. So why not?
Because we can do it more efficiently. And why 5 years?
You have just given the reasons. Kufuor gave those reasons.
No,
they haven't changed.
Kufuor gave those reasons, but we have also known, and the Constitution Review Committee also gave reasons. I mean, emerging norm, emerging global norm, and
that's right.
And then probably took inspiration from Kenya and maybe South Africa. But where do we have to go? I think 4 years is enough to hold our people and our elected representatives accountable. And John Dramani Mahama has demonstrated that. Clearly, in this term of his presidency, he's shown that you can set up your government in less than 3 months. You can do that and get the government running. In fact, he's also shown that you can achieve significant success in your first year in government. So that goes to dispel what President Kufuor said in 2009.
Your people are already undercutting him, trying to shoot ahead of themselves to, who will become the next president or flag bearer of the NDC.
The Constitution Review Committee has put it beyond doubt that he is not going to be a beneficiary of the process.
No, I'm talking about the question of getting to a point of rendering him a lame duck, and then everybody is trying to do something, so you barely have time to govern. Well, the people you are going to use...
Kufuor showed that if you don't want to be a lame duck, you wouldn't be. When he sacked all those who were campaigning to succeed him, he sacked them. So His Excellency John Dramani Mahama must take a leave.
Okay. All right. So we take note of that concern of yours about the extension from 4 to 5 years presidential term. Professor Bafo Adjumandua, you have maybe first a commendation or criticism before you raise one point that you want them to speak to. They will speak to those before they leave.
Overall, I think this is a very progressive step towards redefining our democratic practice.
I'm not tired of it. We are always doing it, but we are never.
No, there's a difference here, Samson. This third committee, the Prempeh Committee, I think they've shown a real difference between themselves and the previous bodies. And also the level of commitment I see in this process by the executive, by the president, if I should be specific, is different. The level of commitment is different. In fact, when they submitted their report, and he did admit that they had gone previously to brief him. So he came there knowing exactly what the recommendations are. He did not raise any objection to anything. All he said was that we are going to send this to the implementation committee. He didn't mention white paper as we used to know in the past. And he did not raise any objection to any of the recommendations. So that impressed me that at least he is personally committed. And he did say, this is what Ghanaians say they want, you see. And putting the whole thing on the laps of Ghanaians, for me, was very impressive. And that's why I see this as a difference. I know, I'm aware of the many reactions, which is good, because the whole idea for this committee and others is for Ghanaians to participate and contribute to its strengthening. So what they have proposed are certainly not final. It's going to go through the mail of public criticisms and other kinds of things before we come to the final conclusion. But so far, I think reaction generally has been good, but I know of specific cases where people are not happy. Like my good friend Inusa said about the 5-year thing. And you know, first of all, there's no magic about the duration of office. There's no magic. Every country, every democratic country chooses the period that they think suits their context. So let's be aware of that. It's not what the Americans do that we should do. After all, Great Britain has no limitation. You can be prime minister for 20 years, so far as people want you to be there.
You can be there for a year.
Oh, yes, as we saw, exactly, as we saw in the recent
or even less than a year.
Less than that.
2 months.
Exactly. That's right. That is that. And those who are 4 years and they are tied down. And
So what? Are we going to bury our heads in the sand like the ostrich and say there was never a problem when actually it had been identified as a problem because of the unbridled campaign periods that presidents and executives, governments were subjected to?
You see, if you take the proposal for the 5 years in isolation, then you're going to have a lot of problems. But if you take in the larger context of the recommendations, where the fear I've read recently of you're extending the corruption, you're extending 1 year of all kinds of negativities. But they forget that within the larger context, they have also proposed, made some proposals that will delimit the power of the president.
Correct.
Because it's the power of appointments that tend to create these issues that we're talking about. So,
including the Independent Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission,
all these are new
which will become the bigger OSP.
Yes.
So if you are stealing, you'll be in trouble. Yes. And again, they are taking away the president's, long immunity from civil action, and also extending the period within which you can take them on criminally once they leave office.
Right. So by so doing, they have placed the president in a different kind of context. That now there are other mechanisms to check your behavior, as well as the kinds of policies you want to initiate. So I think if you take in that context, there should be worry about the 5 years, because there are mechanisms to check excesses. The only thing I didn't see is perhaps a way to even recall a president who misbehaves badly, like some Americans have found themselves in today, So I think overall, I'm happy with the process. Of course, I personally, I didn't like the idea of reducing the age from 40 to 30, because I think at 30 years we don't have enough maturity. Pardon me for those who think I'm wrong, but I think if you take the Ghanaian context into account, for instance, you finish school, well, some do finish school very early, but most Ghanaians from the villages as I come from, by the time you finish your first degree, you are almost 27, 28. And even if by then you have finished your master's, what experience do you have? What exposure have you had to run the country? And, run the country is not running Nook's organization.
So that's the difficulty about the democracy, right?
That's right.
Because as we speak, I have received statements from among those who were championing this particular proposal, reduction in the year, to be able to contest.
Yeah.
The youth groups, they are excited.
Yeah.
That's at least now, from 30, they can be thinking about becoming president.
And I think they have every right to be excited. They have to be excited. But knowing what I know, and at my age, I know that 30 years simply you haven't attained the age of maturity to run a nation. That's what I'm talking about.
So let the people determine that you are 30, you are too young, you are inexperienced, you don't want to.
At least people like you and I are around providing some kind of guidance. Because if democracy was to let people have what they want, we are going to be in a chaos. We are going to have a chaotic situation, society. So there's always the need for people like you and I to provide the kind of guidance that will be needed to make sure, even if a majority of people are opposed to it, there's a certain wisdom that should help us to know.
They have asked questions. If I can be in parliament at 30, why can't I be president at 30? After all, the qualification to be president, part of it is that I'm qualified to be an MP.
Good question, Samson. But you see, parliament, you are elected by your constituents, maybe 15,000 people, where there's no real scrutiny of your character or your experience or anything. Being a parliamentarian is not the same as being a president of a sovereign nation. International relations today, the changes that are occurring, what is the extent of your understanding in order to take this country to deal with the global context? So there's more to it. That's one area that I don't.
So two issues now almost around the same thing a bit. I want to take one more and then we'll take your comments quickly around it. But the rest of my guests who just joined us at 9 will be with us until the show is over. And I'm thinking, are they in this dilemma, Charlotte and Kwesi? Are they thinking, so what did you want us to do? That people are making, proposals, and we find that one proposal is popular. You are saying that we should take it out? Is that what they were appointed to do? So, Nana, I've been looking through the pictures, and I see you there. Were you the one leading your team there?
No, I had the opportunity on invitation by to go and give some insight when they were reviewing, when they were treating the judiciary.
Right.
The theme that borders on the judiciary. Okay. And then subsequently, I was also part of our team, our caucus. The team our caucus selected to also engage them. I must put it on record, our caucus, our party has since put together a committee, which I'm also part.
Inusa mentioned that.
Yeah. And whatever I'm going to say here is not, representational of what the committee is doing. It's my personal view. It may be moderated subsequently by engagement at that level. So I wanted to put it on record.
That's fair.
Even before the MPP came to office, I'd spoken to Prof, if Prof recalls, I thought that there was a need for constitutional review. But I'm a bit conservative, and my views are quite moderated, if I would say by experience and some interactions that I've had in the system. I am of the personal view that a constitution is a legal framework which must be grown through judicial interpretation and legislation. And amendment should be sparingly done. And so if there's going to be an amendment, it must have been occasioned by a major event. And indeed, when you look at Professor Fiaju's report, he makes mention of that. He acknowledges it and says that the invitation that had been given to them to undertake their exercise shows the extent of maturity that we have achieved as a country, more of a housekeeping exercise. And so, yes, I am of that school of thought. I'm open, however, to accept where there is a compelling argument that beyond our experiences in the last 30 years, there's some provision of the Constitution that must be touched. And, you know, that must be very compelling. For one reason, this is the longest constitution, 7 constitution we have had. It has survived about 4 transitions. And so, as the Americans would say, if it hasn't broken, you don't fix it. And so, whatever we intend to fix must have been broken. Whatever we intend to fix, there must be a compelling evidence that as we go forward as a country, we are likely to have a problem. Look, the Americans have had their constitution since 1779. It was, you know, put together in 1777, promulgated, ratified 1778. The British have had an unwritten constitution that they've practiced for several years, right? Until Magna Carta, there hadn't been a major event necessitating reforms. Subsequently, we have seen certain reforms. For instance, the British now has a Supreme Court, right? Contrary to what prevailed historically when they used to have the House of Lords, okay? Subsequently, there has been the Constitutional Reform Act, yes, that has also now brought together the entirety of the realm under one Supreme Court, right, chaired by a president, unlike here where you have a Chief Justice that presides over the entirety of the judiciary. And you see that anytime there is the need for a constitutional intervention, it should be a major event. That really shows how sacred the Constitution is, so that nobody can just tamper with the Constitution. And so that for me is very key. When I look at Professor Prempeh's commission, and I need to commend them, they've done a very good job. I appeared before them, sitting through the process, watching them listen to everybody, trying to make sense about, you know, of what everyone is saying is very difficult. And so it's a very huge public service they've delivered, and they deserve the commendation. The challenge is that what they have out, unlike the Professor Fiajo Committee's report, doesn't have the contextual information background. And so you don't know what informed a particular proposition as compared to Professor Fiajo. And so it becomes very difficult. And that for me is very, very important, because when you look at, for instance, Section 10 of the Interpretation Act, that informs interpretation of the Constitution. And that is why historical perspective or events informing a constitutional reform is very important, so that there is that sentimental attachment, right? And so that for me is key. And we hope to see that. Once we see that, I believe that we'll be able to have more informed discussion than we are having now. But what we have now is very difficult to have that informed discussion. What we have now, to be able to give an informed analysis of it, you have to do a comparative analysis between what they have given us and the Professor Fiajo Committee's report and raise questions. For instance, when you look at the Professor Fiajo Commission's report on the age, on the tenure of the president, they did a historical analysis, right, of where the 4 years came from. The fact that the Consultative Assembly preferred 5 years, but the powers of the government committee, right, wanted the Commission of Experts wanted 4 years. The powers of government committee wanted 5 years, but upon a careful evaluation, they decided on the 5 years. The fundamental question, 4 years. The fundamental question is, what mischief are we seeking to cure with that extension or proposed extension? The mischief, for me, very respectfully, I got that from Professor Prempeh's engagement with Kweku Asante, which is about giving the president sufficient time to finish with his work. Brilliant. But we have to appreciate practically that no president will be able to finish almost everything he finishes, he constants. And so the issue really has to do with continuity. And so we have to pass a law to ensure continuity and not rather extend the president's term. Because the president, he will take loans, he will not be able to finish the loans he takes before he leaves office. He will start projects. The project's lifespan will exceed his tenure. He will pass laws. The laws will exceed his tenure. He might not be able to implement them. And so realistically, adding one more year will not enable the president to finish everything he starts. And so it is an issue of continuity. That has been the debate. Successive presidents not being able to finish projects that their predecessors started. I think that we should look at how best we are going to do it. Professor Prempe's committee did something that for me was very, very brilliant. You see, when you look at Professor Fiajo's committee's report, it talked about strengthening the National Development Planning Committee. Professor Prempe's committee takes it further by saying that every bill that comes to Parliament must show how it ties into the National Development Planning Committee. It is like what we say in civil litigation, the overriding guidance. That for me is very important because that way Parliament will now have the opportunity to assess whether what is being brought before it ties into a national development project. And so that would then render the 5-year or the extension by 1 year redundant. It makes it unnecessary because then whatever the president has started, somebody will take it from there and complete it. I believe that we must, because the Constitution is a legal framework that is capable of growth, as Justice Sowa said in to 4 verses Attorney General, we must explore how to grow the Constitution through legislation and through judicial interpretation.
Right.
That calls for a stronger intellectual-based judiciary. If you compare, if you are going to be very honest with ourselves, if we compare the pre-2000 judiciary to what we have today, and sometimes we all say it in our closet, it's not the same. Why is it not the same? It's not the same because of the mode of appointment. The mode of appointment has resulted in patronage. When I look at Professor Prempe Committee's report, it looks like they want to work on the mode of appointment, but I don't think that it is informed by practical experience on the ground. Why do I say so? They hand it over primarily to the Judicial Council. Without, and I stand to be corrected, I've gone through your report, I don't see much work being done on the current Judicial Council. It looks as though it's been left the way it is. I can understand why they did that because you see, when you look at Professor Fiajo's committee's report, when they presented it to the president and proposed tinkering with the current composition of the Judicial Council, the white paper rejected it. And so I can understand where they are coming from. But if you don't tinker with the current Judicial Council, it is much ado about nothing. It is as though you have handed over the judiciary to itself and the executive, right? But the compromise of the judicial independence of this country is internal and external. You have somebody sitting at the Supreme Court speaking to somebody at the High Court. You have somebody sitting at the presidency speaking to a judge. You see, when you have a Judicial Council that would now decide on appointments to the High Court, decide on the appointments to the Court of Appeal, and decide on the appointments of the Supreme Court, and you have a senior member sitting on the Judicial Committee and telling you, a High Court judge, what to do for him, you will do it. Because you know that your promotion is in his hands, just as the executive. And so that portion of the commission's proposal, very respectfully, sends us back, in fact, but let me wrap up. When you look at the Commonwealth, when you look at what is evolving in the common law jurisdiction, take Canada, take even the United Kingdom, right? They set up a search committee, which is the equivalent of what the University Council does when they are looking for a vice chancellor. They set up in Kenya, Prof's favorite jurisdiction. They set up a search committee, and that search committee will interview applicants, scrutinize them, and decide who is fitting for the job. And so that current proposal doesn't solve the problem we face.
Right. Thank you very much. So three preliminary submissions looking going for the jugular. And so I'd like you, Prof. and Charlotte, to begin with the Ejebafo's concerns. Sure. The first concern is that Fiajo gave us 1,000 pages of a report. You have just given us 128. Why? You don't explain the things you have done. You just give us actionable recommendations.
So our report is in two parts. So this is part one, right? Part one is the abridged version, basically summarizing the key recommendations. Our second and long-form report, so to speak, is due at the end of the holidays. January 5th is when we submit it. That report will have the context, the analysis, everything that puts the recommendation in perspective, right? So you take a recommendation, before you get to it, you would know exactly our thinking that led us to the recommendation. So all of that is there. We're still working to complete that fuller report for submission after the new year. So Bafo is right. I mean, some of the recommendations here appear to be out of context, and until and unless you have that context, you may not really understand fully why we got there or how we got there. On this biggest...
Before he got there, he had mentioned something, even though it sounded a bit contradictory to the point he made about approaching you even before the MPP came into office.
Sure.
That there will be the need for constitution review. His view is that constitution review anywhere must only happen because there is a major development.
Sure.
We are in peacetime. We have no problems.
Yeah, no, I think...
Like where you went to help to make a constitution in Yemen, they had problems. In Kenya, 2017, they had come out of, slashing each other. So what's our problem?
And maybe this is what... So ours is more or less preventative constitutional change.
It ain't broken. You don't fix what is not broken.
But you can anticipate. If you can anticipate that it's broken, I mean, it is broken in many ways, right? We are still working it. It's probably wobbly. It's still, moving, but it's broken somewhat.
He says work it through interpretation
until it collapses.
At the Supreme Court.
It's like, you don't service your vehicle until it collapses and leaves you on the road, right? We are servicing the Constitution while it's still moving so that we avoid a collapse, right? We don't want to get to the crisis point where now, the thing is collapsed and then you are trying to revive it. But also in terms of longevity, the average constitution gets changed almost every 19 to 20 years globally, right? Ours is 32, right? And so I think it's long enough. A whole generation has passed since. Correct. Like I mentioned in the first half of the show, when the Fiajo report was submitted, the youth cohort, we call them the millennials. Now we call them the Gen Z, a whole different generation has sprung up since that period. And I mentioned all of the intervening developments that have happened in Ghana's political and constitutional history that are significant and we must take on board.
We had not had election petitions. We have had two of them.
Parliament, a number of things.
We have not had too many of removals of. We have not had a removal of a CJ.
Article 146. We have done it exactly. So there are lessons for constitution.
And the economy had not collapsed. All of them. We have not gone bankrupt. We have gone there.
This is a constitution that has a whole chapter on finance, on debt, on contracting, and it means that something is not working there. If you can have all of these provisions and still go, you raise debt to a point where you go bankrupt.
It's a question of the longevity and intervening to make corrections. The reason you have provided for a certain timeline within which we should be revising the
Constitution. So we have in our Living Constitution chapter, we say, look, give every generation an opportunity for them to take a look at the Constitution. Don't wait for it to collapse. Don't wait for a crisis to hit so that we can have this continual refreshment of the Constitution, re-engineering, give people that opportunity. So I think I take on board Bafor's points are very, very legitimate. He raises very, very germane points, both on the process and on the substance. I think on the substance, though, on the Judicial Council, he needs to go look at it again. We in the Fuller report, he will see a different Judicial Council. But I think also that we don't leave judicial appointments to the judiciary. Not at all, actually. Not at all.
Okay.
We are very mindful. The appointments is a big part of the story, right? And he makes a very good point, Honorable Fusen makes a very good point about the 5-year issue.
So hold on there.
Right?
Quickly, Charles wants to make an intervention here. Right.
I understand Bafo's point. As a lawyer, I'm also very vested in the sacredness of the Constitution and not tinkering with it easily. But I think that in the peculiar case of Ghana, we have to remember the history of this Constitution, what it came out of. It came out of a military dictatorship trying to go back to constitutional democracy. And
it has been said I was sort of an appeasement to Gary Rawlings.
So there are issues there. There are very fundamental issues right there that we've never fixed. It's been good for us as a country that it's worked. We wanted political stability out of this. It's given us that. But essentially as well...
Given us that on the back of an imperial president.
We're getting to that. But essentially, who does the Constitution belong to? The people. If we as a people decide that we want the opportunity every 5 years to look at our Constitution again, we own it. That right should not be taken from us. If we say every 20 years in a time of peace is not broken, but we want to look at it again and make sure it continues to fit, that right should not be taken away from us. Doing all the engagements during this constitutional review process, 2 things really stuck out to me. Just the overwhelming interest from the people, not the experts, not the elites, the everyday people showing up at these engagements to say that this is my issue, I want to have my voice heard, this is what I want to see change in the Constitution. For me, that was very important because it also shows that we have accepted as a people that we want constitutional democracy. We may not be too happy with it, but we also believe that we can fix our country through constitutional change. That is important. The other thing for me was that the Afrobarometer reports have over the years shown that we are losing faith in democracy. We think democracy is failing us. We think it's a choiceless democracy. We're not happy with the way the arms of government have managed stuff. Yet, people believe that if we can show up at this forum and speak, things can change and deliver the kind of democracy we want. That, for me, is important. And I think that should be respected above every other philosophy of how we manage constitutions. Let the people be at the center of this. Let the people own it. And the duty of government is to listen to the people.
Interesting. So apart from the groundswell of, as it were, views that have been shared that there is the backsliding of democracy within Africa, not only Africa, but elsewhere. Apart from that, should that be a strong enough point to want to tweak our constitution? Before we went for Professor Fiajo, we had the Africa Review, peer review mechanism, and President Kufuor committed to it. That eventually culminated in President Mills saying this is the time to do it. Is that enough? That's not localized, the backsliding of democracy across. Is that enough reason we should be tweaking the constitution?
It's not localized, but we are a leading light in Africa. And in fact, many have commended us that without a crisis, we have sat down to say, what do we want to see in our constitution? And we have to remain a leading light. The fact that democracy is backsliding, Ghana should show a better example. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. We're sitting here on a Saturday morning discussing our constitution. Different views. What is more beautiful than this?
About Christmas season.
Okay.
I'm telling you, this is the essence of it.
Let me go back to Prof. He is coming to you and Professor Bafo Ajmandua's questions.
No, just a minute. It's important for me to add that the clamor for a review of the Constitution did not start with the Constitution Review Committee.
No.
It started in 2008. And that was why President Kufuor, in his State of the Nation address, indicated the need for a constitutional review. In fact, in 2008, constitutional review was on the ballot. It was on the ballot. So yes, when you look at evolution of constitutions in some jurisdictions,
right,
they come after a major. Even in our country, we've had 3-4 constitutions after major events, or 5 if you add a changeover from
but
the.
We don't want that event.
Okay.
So Prof, before you go to the extension of the tenure and the change in the age, reduction in the age, senior citizen Dr. Jesse wants to know: did you receive memos? We know Fiajo received a lot of memos. Clares committee, they received a lot of memos and so on. Did you receive memos?
Oh yeah, quite a number. I mean, what? 600?
About 758 submissions.
Yeah. I mean, less than 1,000, but we received substantial memos from institutions, organizations, from even Jubilee, right? I mean, when Jubilee House wanted to, or a part of it, I think the anti-corruption group there, they sent a memo to us. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent a memo. NACOP sent a memo. So some government institutions dealt with us through memos.
Right. The security agencies.
And so we received memos from individuals, from private institutions and organizations, and from even government. Yeah.
Private business.
Absolutely. So it wasn't just oral engagement. No, we received a bunch of very solid memos.
I know a couple of them who are already complaining that their views didn't find expression. And I know others too who are celebrating that their views found expression, including the youth groups. Yeah. They've actually shared their memo they brought to you with me, and they are very happy that you gave them 30 years. So tell us, why extend the term and why reduce the age?
If with your permission, let me just chip in one point about this response to the global dynamics on backsliding. And you say, well, it's not localized. In part it is, right? When you have an inauguration for your president, right, after a democratic election, at which one of your neighbors is invited, who has overthrown, who has come to power through a coup d'etat, and that neighbor of yours gets the loudest applause from the crowd, you have to sit up and pay attention.
Ibrahim Traore.
Right?
Yeah.
So, indeed, I mean, what is happening in our immediate environment is very germane to this process. So when we recount the development that have happened that affect our thinking around constitutional review, we mention that as one of the important events. You know, this resurgence of coups d'etat is something Ghana needs to pay attention to. Because if you listen to the youth chatter around this matter, you know, they are echoing some of these sentiments. They are losing hope and pointing to these other countries. So the democratic backsliding is not just something external to this place. Afrobarometer is telling us that Ghanaians like democracy, but they are dissatisfied with this outcome. So that is also evidence we need to pick up before, again, we get to a collapse or a crisis. So I think being preventative is good.
So quick to the extension and reduction in the age.
Yes, so the reduction in the age, you know, there's a bit of history, right? In 1960, in the 60 Constitution, the age for president minimum was 35. In 1969, and this is an important difference, we had a ceremonial president. I think the age was 40 or higher. But real power was with the executive. Was with the prime minister and the cabinet. And to get into cabinet, you had to come from parliament. That age was 21. Right? The minimum age at the time was 21. So really, the governing power, those who held governing power, we set the minimum age for them at 21.
In Ghana, a constitution in Ghana's history?
Absolutely, in 69. Okay. So when President Kufuor when President Kufuor became a deputy minister, he was 20-something, right? Not even 30, because his constitution allowed him to get to Parliament at 21, and from Parliament he could be picked to become a cabinet minister, and he could have become prime minister too. Buzia could have been 22. We allowed it, right? So that is where real power resided. Then now you take on board the demographic changes that have happened. We have a much more youthful population. So it's important also, the Constitution has other values, signaling effects, signaling values. You need to signal to the population that, look, you matter.
Country belongs.
We are not just saying that, well, yeah, maybe Ghanaians will decide that after 20, after 21 or 30, we are not going to vote for you as president. But let it
And you
be
can
done
run.
by Ghanaians.
Okay. Next to
So
5
there is
years.
really, we are just telling the youth, you matter. This is your constitution. This is your democracy. And if you have the right preparation in your life and you aim for it, you can also be, like this. And in many more advanced countries, they are choosing much, much younger people. Much, much younger people as prime ministers, as presidents, globally. Then so it's not a big deal, that the age 30 is not such a big deal at all. If in 60 we were
the concern,
35.
even in our royal homes, we know that you can be a chief at age 1, but you would have been groomed.
Yeah, but you can be a chief if at 30 nobody will groom
Maybe
you.
we should start grooming.
Right? At 30, if you were made a
Maybe
paramount
the
chief at
responsibility is for us
30,
to groom them.
nobody's going to groom you. 30 is plenty, even in our traditional systems, right? I don't think there's anybody at 30 who is there as a regent and you have somebody groom you. 30 is pretty high.
Right. So the extension to 5 years, which is also...
The 5 years point, okay. So we did address, so I think the efficiency argument is strong, right? Indeed, those who have run the Constitution, when you probe them on the number of years, it's definitely an argument about we don't have enough time, right? We don't have enough time to complete our agenda in 4 years because we spend X number of months on the front end doing this, and on the back end, we spend X number of months doing campaigning. So we address both issues on the front end and the back end. We said, okay, when you get into office, one of the things that tend to burden you as president is all these appointments you must make, right? Many of them, you don't even know these people. You are just saddled with a burden of appointments.
That's right.
Let us relieve you of some of that burden.
Have you confirmed? We understand it's in the region of about 4,000 to 6,000 people that the president appoints.
And we keep, anytime you create a new body, you pass a new statute, you are actually extending that. So it doesn't stop. It's growing.
But you have cut that burden. So why do you still want to give them more years?
So I'm coming to that. So we've cut it on the front end, and we're saying that at the back end, there's a campaign season we are now putting there. So all of it to save you time, right? So that you can really govern. And we've made certain reforms.
The reason you shouldn't extend it, they are nodding. Those who have concerns are nodding.
Let me give him some information quickly. Something. You see, we diagnose the problems wrongly. You have political parties who, for 4 years, don't discuss policies internally. Dr. Tonyedu said that the NDC goes to Congress and they never discuss policy. When do we produce our manifesto? Election year.
Sure.
It is wrong. You must be ready to lead. You must be ready to govern.
But that's not
as a political
problem.
No, I'm saying that.
Problem.
So you don't cure that with a constitutional amendment. The problem is that we are not ready to govern. You sit in opposition for 4 years. You are criticizing the government. What are you ready to do differently? You wait till election year, about 3-4 months to the elections before you produce your manifesto.
Right.
That is a problem.
Thank you.
Look, the youth, they were hailing Tuari, not because of the archaicness of our constitution, because Tuari stands for action. They see that Tuari is fighting corruption or something. So the youth, they want jobs, they want corruption fought. That is it. It's not because of the constitution.
Yes. As for Tuare, we can look at the substance and it will reveal a different picture.
I'm not sure the point Balfour is making, right? Balfour's point, look, we have for many years lambasted this constitution for being a constitution made for one man. Which one man? everybody knows, was a reference to Rawlins. I find it quite interesting that somehow we claim that this constitution was made for Rawlins. And yet when you want to tinker with it, those probably who were also loudest in making the claim seem to now like the constitution and are hugging it. It's like, hey, don't touch my constitution. It's working for me. You know?
That's
so
no, not
so, it's not you.
That is what I'm saying.
That's fine.
So I think that the genealogy of the constitution is important, which is why I think that, the point Charlotte was making, let's look at how we came by this constitution. And yes, we have lived with it. We have tolerated it. We are very Ghanaian about it. We've really tolerated it for a very long time. But 32 years, I think, is long enough for us to say, look, all of you guys who think it was made for this one man, whilst one man is not there, let's sit back and look at it.
We're at extension from 4 to 5 years.
Yes.
And your own things you have fixed in the constitution, in the proposals now,
help
appear to defeat the need for an extra year.
They don't
They enhance.
If he's appointing 7,000 people, you are saying we want to appoint far less.
And have more time to govern.
If he needs time for campaign, you are saying we are going to have an off-campaign season. So why do you still want him to do 5 years?
So you see, we have to take on two perspectives here. The voter's perspective is important, right? But also, we are talking about governing, right? A constitution is also a governing document. So the perspective of those who govern us is just as legitimate, right? So in this discourse, in this conversation around the constitution, we sampled all of those views. And so the view from the inside is as valid, right? If they're telling us this is how power works, this is how it doesn't work, we take it on board. It's not that we accept it.
Okay, so now let me get two other.
No, but I think that the other thing about the 5 years is that it's important because numbers are always going to be arbitrary, right? It's important to be guided also by what is the comparative best practice in an area.
Right.
So the fact that our peer nations in this global community are largely moving towards 5. For something that is arbitrary. We have 4 because America has 4.
That's right.
And we chose, the 4 is not magic, really. There's no magic to 4. We have 4 because the leading democracy at the time we thought had 4, so everybody follows. But even that, many are moving away from that, right? So if 5 is emerging as the mean or the median or whatever average that is, and we say, fine, even in our region, you look at our neighborhood, Liberia has 6, Benin has 7. We in Nigeria are the only ones, with 4. Most have 5. What is wrong with that? But then the question, then people just uncritically just multiply it by 2 and say 10 years. But we're not saying that. We are saying that we believe that a president who has been given a 5-year term would be hard-pressed to argue at the end of the 5 years that have not had enough time. And that Ghanaians are probably less likely to repeat an underperforming president who has had 5 years than to repeat a 4-year one, right? Mm-hmm. It's not based on any, but there's also a little bit of political science here, right? We're saying that this is not going to be automatically 5 times 2. And that 5 years, in our view, will become the reward for the president who, after the first term, has done very well.
And it may not be a fair question, but people are asking, so you are saying that we should have been saddled with Akufo-Addo for an extra.
No, that's not fair. Look,
it will be unfair if I sit here and not protest. If I sit here and not protest.
In Liberia, they had.
Sit here and not protest.
So Liberia has 6-year term, right? Times 2 is 12. In our case, you have to do 3 terms to get to Liberia's 12. Countries vary, right? George Weah had for 6 years. And then he went back and said, Charlie, another 6 years. I'm thinking they're like another George Weah for 6 years. Right? So those things really weigh on your mind, obviously. How much longer am I going to give this person and put up with this person for another term?
All right.
So 6 if you are giving 4, it's easy. We've gotten used to this 4 times 2, 4 times 2 stuff. And I think it's going to be very difficult, really.
Thank you. I'm coming to Vicky Bright and Oliver. They will raise their issues, then you will now respond, and then you can take leave of us. And please, when you take leave of us, you may listen, you may not listen, because you may not like what they have to say. Charlotte wanted to say something.
I'm surprised that we propose increasing the presidential term limit to 5 years, as well as the one for the MPs. So far, I have not heard any disagreement on why MPs should not have 5 years.
Because it's tied to the president.
Not necessarily.
They can decide. The MPs like this. So MPs want to go for 5.
MPs like the 5 years for themselves, but nobody wants a 5 years for the president. Is that the understanding?
A good point.
I think...
That's why you don't like 5.
I think in both instances it should be 4 years.
Okay.
Okay,
we should be more focused on how to ensure continuity.
Thank
you. They're waiting for you.
Thank you. Yes, Vicky. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Vicky Bright. So, what do you also have to say, and what do you wish that the process doers will answer?
First of all, I want to commend the committee. Like everyone else, I think they've done a very thorough job, and it's a good job. I actually do believe that it is time for us to have another look at the Constitution. So I agree with the whole exercise that the President entrusted in their hands to undertake. When I look at the report, it is seeking to close some democracy gaps that we have in our system. And we do have some gaps. And so I'm kind of thinking that that aspect of it has been quite well done. I don't agree with everything that has been proposed. Just talking about the most recent thing that we're all discussing, the presidential term, for example, I am one of those who believe that we should keep to the 4-year term for both the MPs and the president, simply because our institutions are not yet strengthened enough to allow a president to go on for 5 years. If we had stronger institutions, if corruption was not systematic, etc., then I may have held a different view. But looking at where we are at the moment, and looking at the institutions that we have, and looking at how they operate, and looking at the fact that there are usually little or no consequences for falling foul of our anti-corruption laws, etc., etc. Against that backdrop, I would say no. Let's stick to the 4 years.
So does it not matter that the innovations include strengthening the institutions that you are concerned about? That if they were as strong and they were as active, then you would be okay with extending. But they are extending at the same time, giving you teeth to bite. The Attorney General is going to lose some of its powers, so some prosecutions can happen, impartially, and among other things.
Samson,
perhaps maybe they should also reduce the threshold to impeach the president.
The devil is in the constitutional detail, isn't it? These are proposals. We don't yet know how they'll be implemented. Once we see how they've been implemented, and once we see how they have worked in practice, then we can look at some of these things. Because look, 10 years is a whole generation. And so it's before we jump to we take that kind of quantum leap, we have to be very, very sure that we are not creating a monster we can't control. So that is where I would leave that one, I think. I'm very excited about some of the other proposals that they made. The whole thing to do with political campaign finances, for example, I think that was a gap that has been long-standing and that really needed to be addressed. And I think they've addressed it well. Because the Electoral Commission's job is so vast that is the whole focus has been on elections. And so that is one aspect that is there, beautifully laid down in statute, but has been ignored simply because of the overwhelming nature.
Like Bafo just confirmed, the parties are just election machines.
Yes.
They come to do election, go to sleep.
Yes, and then, you know, the Democracy Fund as well, I think it's a good move. It will open up, if done properly, if implemented properly, it will open up avenues for youth and women, more women to participate in politics in this country. Looking at some of the institutions they've suggested, like the IRC and the Anti-Corruption Agency, for example. Ethics, yes, AEC.
And anti-corruption.
Yeah, some of the questions that come into my mind are, who is going to elect the membership of these institutions? Who is going to have the power to remove them once they are elected? And who is controlling their funding? Where is the money coming from?
Most important.
The most important thing, because he who pays the piper calls the tune. Because if we don't do that carefully, and we allow the executives to still infiltrate these organizations, then we are just rebranding the problem. We are not fixing the problem. So for me, as I said, I'll repeat what I just said, the devil is in the constitutional detail. So if we can do all of that and do it well, then I'm okay. And then the other thing is MPs, you know, finally decoupling the legislature from the executive, so that the three arms of government can work as a democracy is
very
supposed
soon,
to
Bafo
work.
will tell you why that
And
is
of course,
bad.
I'm sure most MPs will be kicking up in arms, and because who wants to lose power? I mean, power, once you have power, you don't want to let it go. You'll fight for it. So I expect our legislative, you know, our legislators to fight.
They even suggest that if you resign as an MP for the purpose of taking up a ministerial position, you should not. That's what they say. Why?
Yes.
Why do you do that?
Yes, because...
Leave me alone. I can become an MP and then I want to become a minister. Then I step down.
But isn't that the whole thing about, okay, at that point, this is not legislated, if you want to use the word legislate, at the political party level. When SOE ministers, before the party said, no, you can't do this, they will just be sitting there while campaigning and completely neglect their whole organization, which is a state-owned enterprise, which is critical to some aspect or the other of our nation. And then some of the party said, no, you have to resign before you go and do it and all that. It's similar, except this is on a national scale. So in many ways, it's even worse, you know, arguably. So I think that it's something that we've been discussing. It's something that, like many other things in this country, we swept under the carpet for a very long time. And I'm very happy that the Prempeh Committee has taken it on head-on to tackle it. And I think we have to, if you want to be an MP, great. Serve your people.
That's right.
Focus on your constituency. Because look, this is a developing nation. There are lots of things to develop in your constituency. Some MPs come for 20 years, 5 terms, and you go to their constituencies and nothing, absolutely nothing has happened.
They've built loyalty.
That's what they invested.
They fed people over the years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Almost every month or 3 months, they are sending Momo to the constituency.
That is it. You know, so, I mean, and then, you know, when we had the national health insurance, that became the sexy thing. Everybody was registering, which is great. Nice. That was what they used. And then now that that's over, it's like, what next? You know, so I think they really ought to focus on their constituencies, maybe until we get to a point where we can call Ghana a developed country. And then, you know, efforts can afford to be dissipated or divided. But for now, I say no.
All right. Oliver.
Everybody's been their lane.
Thank you.
And Prof and Charlotte, I need to let you know that, you know, you've heard about the government WhatsApp? Oh, you guys are not in Ghana?
No. Okay, I heard.
So that 60-plus member committee working on ethics and anti-corruption action plan for the next 5 years after the 2014 one expired in 2024. There are things you have proposed that they are also celebrating. They are just happy because they too, in their processes, they have made those proposals. Okay. Campaign off-season. is one of them. They've made those proposals. Party, disclosure for funding and all of that. They've made those proposals. And they are looking for legislative changes. So if the legislative changes will begin from a constitutional level, that's even all the better. Yes, Oliver.
Thank you.
You have done this before.
And perhaps let me start from that point. I think
you're fatigued.
Not even. I mean, I think that one of the things I'm most encouraged by, and I know it's still a tentative report in many ways, is that the committee had sort of the right instincts for a constitutional advisory body like this. One, which is having the humility to kick certain things down the can. So you have to be able to recognize that you can't fix all of these things within the report that you have, and so you have to create pathways. So when it comes to decentralization, the Devolution Commission allows you to create that pathway for how you deal with that problem.
That sounds like passing the buck, doesn't it?
No, but to be democratic, you have to recognize that the institutions have to function in a way, and you give them a nudge in what direction you want to go. So when you look at it holistically, you see several aspects where it tells Parliament to create something along these lines. So in terms of constitution writing, technically, the technical process, I think that's brilliant. But I think the most important aspect also here for persons who have been close to the process is that for the first time, we have unlocked the challenge to how we fix this constitution. And perhaps the most important chapter, therefore, in this document is how we deal with Chapter 25. And it's something that haunted the Fiajo Committee, haunted the Clara one. And even before, in the conversations before this, we hosted the case for a new constitution focused on this Chapter 25 problem. And I think in many respects, they have fixed the Chapter 25 problem by saying that, okay, let us focus certain aspects of the Constitution on what we call the basic structure or the core elements of the constitutional identity, and entrench those. And then we have a middle tier where Parliament then resolves that by 75% majority. And then we have the non-entrenched as it exists. With that, there's a lot of changes that can happen. And even more importantly, and something we've been campaigning on, is the Citizens Initiative, or the Popular Initiative, that allows ordinary citizens to collect signatures and make constitutional proposals. In addition to that, one of the bigger problems even some people have
So if you are being slow in getting it, Chapter 25 is talking about how to amend the Constitution.
How you amend the Constitution.
Right.
Now, one of the bigger challenges even that in allowing citizens to come in is, but what if by a wave of some popularists or some wave of citizens then deciding, like in certain democracies where through this process they've decided that we don't want any more mosques or women should not wear hijab or things like that. How do you guard against this popularist wave abridging fundamental human rights?
Especially in a country where the democracy is literally hijacked by two parties.
Absolutely. So you have a situation where they have put in certain process guarantees in terms of how that would be activated. So I think that the most beautiful part of this whole thing is really figuring out how to make that work. So I'm encouraged by that, and I think that we should pay a lot more attention to that, and it gives us a lot of pathway going forward. The difference between the Fiajo report and this one, and both are talking about development democracy, is that when it came to the Fiajo, the linchpin for that development, everything was on the National Development Planning Commission. And I remember even when we were doing this, and at the end of it, many of us were joking that I think all of us should just go and join the National Development Planning Commission because that's the heartbeat of what the Constitution, the committee created. And so when the white paper then deflated that, it ended the entire architecture or theory of why the Constitution was being reformed. In this case, I see the same thing happening on the extent of Parliament, that a lot of the blockages that the Constitution Committee want to unblock is that they want Parliament to assume a certain role in our democracy in terms of how we align power, as not that creating institutions where we are giving the president consistent power. So much of the hope of the committee is bent on a Parliament that is waking up to that responsibility. Sadly, the conversation for Parliament itself recognizing that, look at the much power that we have been given has been on, are we still being made ministers or not? which is perhaps failing to recognize that the bigger beneficiary of the changes they are making is in fact Parliament. So for me, I do hope that gumbo works in terms of how Parliament, oils the machinery of what we're intending to create.
But that bigger power is duty to do something which they are not going to benefit from.
But you see, that's the question is whether or not you're creating
no incentive.
Exactly. Whether or not you're intending to create a constitution that benefits the elite, then you might as well leave the process, what we currently have in place. Or something that looks at, during the Judiciary report, we're talking about tightening the nuts and bolts of the Constitution. I think this is a great way in which you have a body that is giving significant mandate to tighten the nuts and bolts of our democracy. In a vast, I don't think there is any other way in which you can unblock some of the things that you are thinking about doing in terms of how the democracy should function. So, whether or not it breaks or whether or not it succeeds, it's really Parliament that has to carry it. But because of that, and this is where the difficulty of the emoluments thing comes up, because Parliament it's essentially control of the public purse, okay? And so even if you give the power to anybody, and you told anybody that you're not going to give parliamentarians X, Y, Z, like for instance, they're proposing that Parliament should not have a share in the District Assembly's Common Fund. They approve the budget. They can just sit on it and decide that, well, unless you give us X, Y, Z, we're not going to move the process along. So that's where you have to really think through. And for instance, in terms of conversations, like my attention was drawn to sort of the Kenyan example, where you're saying that, okay, you have an emoluments committee. Well, the emoluments can decide what they want to decide, but we are not going to do anything else unless you're able to cater for our needs in many respects. Perhaps that's the compromise there. That there's so many ways in which Parliament controlling the public purse can be able to advance, whether or not it is disbursement towards their constituencies, whether or not it is ensuring that they themselves are catered for in a particular way, as long as they unblock all the other areas for the democracy to function. Maybe that's the gumbo or what we need for these things to function. But I think as far as I am concerned, there's so many technical gaps that exist that they have figured out the technicalities of how to make the democracy function. And perhaps that's the most important aspect of this. Now, in terms of where I would have wanted to see certain things happen, of course, we were campaigning for the voting age to be reduced to 16 and people being able to go to 18. So for me, this is not even progress. I'm surprised that we are hailing 30 years in many respects. We are a democracy that is studying, majority youth. But I think that on the question, and I agree with Bafo, particularly on the question of the judiciary, that we really need to tighten that. And I think we'll have to also wait to see the full report in terms of how they deal with it. Because in terms of, when you look at the memo that Tokonu had sent to the presidency, say that we are receiving between 500 to 700 cases at the Supreme Court. Now the proposal here is that certain appeals that start from the lower courts will not end up in the Supreme Court. But the vast majority of appeals are also coming from the High Court, rather than from the lower courts, in essence. So that problem still exists. Now that the Supreme Court has been capped at 15, you haven't solved that pipeline problem in terms of, my thinking perhaps would be that we don't see much on the Court of Appeal itself.
They now say that if an appeal to the Supreme Court is not
as of right, that it has to be.
You must go for leave.
So, but that is for the lower courts. It's not from the High Court.
So you see, when you look at the Supreme Court, at certain times, they try to take this kind of posture, even though it's not in the law. Yeah. And I have witnessed it, where I take a case to the Supreme Court, and as we see it, it's a big constitutional matter. Yeah. There's no decision on it. Yeah. All you will find is the court note that says dismissed.
Yeah. Or they try, but the vast majority of times, they want you to get you to withdraw it. So it doesn't become a headache.
Yeah, sometimes they encourage you.
So they continuously badger you till you withdraw. You decide that I'm withdrawing it. And I think that at the end of the day, it undermines what we expect of the Supreme Court. But it's also because the court is essentially overloaded. I'll have to look again a bit about the nature of the appointment process. And I'm aligned with Bafo on this, that the vast majority of pressures come from within the judiciary itself. Judges are afraid of judges, to be honest. And also in terms of the pressures from the executive as well. So perhaps that's the part that I need to go and re-look at more generally. But in terms of technical constitution making, I think that they have unlocked the door for us.
Okay, all right. So as I've heard from the two of them now, they practically have no questions for the committee. They have no questions. So I want to dispatch them. We have kept them beyond the time we had agreed. I want to dispatch them. So we return and then we continue. Particularly also on the part of the process questions. A white paper will come, definitely will come, or there will not be one. there won't be one. You say there shouldn't be. Okay, let's see how all that goes. So, Prof. Rempe and Charlotte, thank you very much for making time to join us.
I was tempted to clap, but
Oh, you can clap. You can clap.
oh, wow.
Right, okay, all right. Thank you very much. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with my guests in the studio. They begin to do their own thing. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And thank you also very much. As we understand, you're really enjoying this program. The other thing I discover is that, for example, I've received a number of questions. And because I have read the report, I know those questions shouldn't be asked. But that's fine. Our job is that we do all the heavy lifting, and then we break it down for you. So there are people who are asking certain questions. If they clicked on the report, they will see the answers right there. So again, when you are framing the question, you may frame it as exploratory rather than criticism, because you can criticize something you don't know about, and the thing you are criticizing has actually been done, And that's what I said about the earlier time when I said immediately they presented their report, I heard some people started talking and they hadn't read the report. I'm like, oh, how? Victoria Bright is international corporate lawyer and entrepreneur. Oliver Barker-Vomawo is constitutional rights and policy strategy advisor, Democracy Hub. He was a pivotal part of the Professor Fiajo report of 2011, that 1,000-page report. Professor Bafo Ajimendria is former UN Senior Governance Advisor. Inusa Hussaini is former MP, Tamale Central, and former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. When we talk about constitution review processes in this country, he's always there, in there. Like they spoke about Aiko Otu, who had become like a live member, even though he wasn't a member of the committee. You find Inusa doing that, particularly also with the, sometimes I want to ask whether I should call it the Chairman Sambonsu or the Clara Berry, but it was the Chairman Sambonsu Clara Berry Committee because he set it up as a minister, and they raised the issues about it should have been set up by the presidency, So Nana Ejay Bafo is Vice Chair, Subsidiary Legislation Committee and Member, Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament. I'm sure in his preliminary comment you would have heard him talking about very substantive matters and talking about history in a way that you would have loved it. So these are people who are deeply read about these subject matters and are commenting about them. So let me share just a couple of your messages and then we will continue from there. This one, Dr. Albert says that if you resign from the legislature, we will be saddled with the cost of organizing by-elections just because you want to be in the executive. So I'm happy with the proposal they have made now. You can only be an MP, you can't be a minister and an MP at the same time. And if you resign so that you get that job, sorry, we are not going to entertain you. Yakubu Ibn Chambers says, my upbeat assessment of the final report of the Constitution Review Committee is that the report explores the true feelings of the citizens, and it is an excellent exercise to rebrand Ghana. The only single chapter that shattered the beauty of the recommendations. Oh, shatters the beauty of the recommendation. Take that single one out and let's deal with that. Is the extension of the term of the president from 4 to 5 years. Why now? Yeah. Why not then? I sense a certain chronic gratification of power here. Yakubu Ibn Chambers in Wale Wale. So if you are joining the train, if you are joining the suspicious train that says that this is intended to give President Mahama another period, please exercise yourself of it. Everything in this review will be done post-Mahama. He's not supposed to enjoy from anything that is being done. Professor Douglas says that, okay, so he says, my heartfelt congratulations to Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh and the entire CRC for putting forward such bold, forward-looking and development-oriented proposals. They reflect courage, foresight, and a deep commitment to the long-term future of our nation. Even if only half of these recommendations are implemented, their impact would be transformational, strengthening institutions, inspiring confidence, and laying a durable foundation for sustainable progress for generations to come, especially for the unborn African child. So, he signs off as Engineer Professor Douglas Boating. Thank you very much for your comments and contributions as well to Newsfile. Then, Edubuahin says that, I agree with those against the extension of the 4 years term. The opposition should learn how to form shadow governments. So when elected, appointing ministers become quick. We should bear in mind that we haven't had exceptional leaders in the Fourth Republic across board. Just imagine 10 years of Akufo-Addo. Really, do we have such short memories? 4 years term is more than enough for a good leader. What has to be removed is the indemnity clause. Okay, so the indemnity clause is when you have to you indemnify them after they've left power after 2 years, right? Is it 3 or 3?
Currently.
Now they are giving it up to 4 years. Have you seen that recommendation? You're okay with it? 4 years, but civil proceedings can go on. You can be sued, but not a criminal process. What do you say about that?
Because I wanted the criminal to be removed as well. There's no statute of limitations for crime.
Crime, yeah.
Our jurisdiction. So they've aligned the civil with what exists.
Yeah.
Within the civil, if it expires, it expires.
Yeah.
So I would have been more okay with removal.
So if you leave power today, we can come after you because you can't account for something.
Yes, it doesn't matter how long. I mean, the same way if I committed a crime in 82, that they can still come back for me and look for me. I think that's...
And in fact, Samson, the Constitution...
But if you want to do that, is 4 years not enough? If after 4 years you can't prosecute, you can't bring somebody, investigate somebody or prosecute them, then you don't mean to prosecute them.
But even Samson, if you look at the Constitution carefully, there is no prohibition against investigating a sitting president for the commission of a crime. There's no such. So a sitting president can be investigated for the commission of a crime.
But you see,
so you simply do not have to give him indemnity for 4 years.
Okay, so Samson, an investigation may lead to prosecution. And so you don't need an indemnity against investigation. It is enough that the Constitution creates a limitation on the duration within which the president, that's right, that takes care of the investigation. Because investigation, as I said, lead. But Samson, I think it's the way we treat our presidents. We should begin to look at the president as a trustee. And so a trustee should be accountable. And so if a trustee is going to be accountable, within which period? Because we also need to create a balance, taking into account our sociological circumstances, that somebody can be mischievous with that power. And so within what time frame can we possibly do an investigation and also do a prosecution? I suspect that once the prosecution has started, then there wouldn't be a time frame within which the prosecution should come to an end. And so it will not cover an ongoing prosecution.
I suppose you are speaking to one of the recommendations they have made.
That's right.
And I was one of those who made those proposals. Sure. It looks like there was popularity for it, and they have done it. That we cannot be investigating forever and we cannot be prosecuting forever. There must be timelines to how we do these things.
Yeah.
And it's not like novel to Ghana.
Yes. And so I think that once you assume public office, you should be ready to account for your stewardship.
That is
But
our public office cannot be treated.
Nobody wants to account
Honorable,
for anything.
the central proposition of any democracy is that the powers of government will be exercised for the benefit of the people.
Yes.
And so it's a trust relationship. The central proposition is a trust relationship. It's not that we are not seeing the president as a trustee. That is the proposition of a democracy. That the people in whom power is vested give the power to elected officials to exercise it on their behalf. It's a trust relationship.
You guys need to hear this. Prince Bless says, my questioning is in regards to the proposed presidential term from 4 years to 5 years. Why not 7 years fixed term once, just as is being done for the independent constitutional bodies? Remember, Prof. Fiajo said, give them 10 years. I think the other group came and said, give them a fixed term. This group also comes and says, give them a fixed term. Why don't we do the same thing for the president as well? Just come in and do 1 year and go away.
Yes, and go away.
Yes.
One term.
Why don't we also see the 4-year term as a midterm elections of the president? So if you are doing well, you are given 4 years.
Okay.
If you are not doing well, you are kicked out. Why do you want to be saddled with a president who is not doing well for 7 years and we don't have the right to say that you are not doing well?
What about the president is doing very well and everybody is happy with the president?
So we give him 4 years. So the 4 years is a midterm elections. It's a midterm
Temperature check.
temperature check.
Validation, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I think that the current situation, the status quo, for me works.
I'll read this message from an Army General, and we will proceed for your submissions to continue. An important question for today. The committee recommends that the CDS should be appointed based on the recommendations from the Armed Forces Council. However, the membership of the Armed Forces Council remains intact based on, it's part of the concerns that Bafo was raising about the Judicial Council. But they have explained to us that this is only the summary, and that in the full report, we will get to know the mechanics. I don't know if, like Oliver's time, what they did not only have all the background, they actually also did the draft instruments. So if we are going to amend a particular provision, they give you the draft amendment that you are going to use. So you know in clear terms what they want to do. So it says it remains intact. Based on the Constitution, the president or his representative chairs the council. Other key members of the council are the ministers of defense, interior, and foreign affairs. Others include the CDS, Army Commander, Chief of Navy, and Chief of Air Staff, among others. This is the body that is to recommend who should be the CDS to the president. I think that unless the Armed Forces Council is reconstituted, then the recommendation process for the CDS will be flawed. All right, so Prof. Prempe, I'm sure they are listening. Just in the same way as was said about the Judicial Council, you need to change that Judicial Council, reduce the members who are representing the president on that board, to be sure that if you are doing it, and then Samson, this is long ago, but I'll try. Samson Frederick Gura says that I perfectly agree with Honorable Inusa. The problem the Constitution Review Committee sought to fix by proposing the extension of the term is not a legal or constitutional issue. It is a people problem and an attitudinal one. 4 years is enough as a term if we are serious as a nation. Why do we have a situation where the next election campaign begins immediately after the swearing-in ceremony of a president? JM is barely done with the first year of his second term. Yet in his own party, people are campaigning to succeed him. What time do we have to build a nation? The MPP is campaigning to elect their next flag bearer in January 2026. Again, what time do we have to build the nation? I think the CRC proposed timelines for campaigning And I think that will be helpful. We should just change our attitude as a people. Everything should not be about politics. Why reduce the age of qualification for the president from 40 to 30 and not cap the age at which a person cannot be president? Why risk having a president at 90 years if we don't put an upper limit? Okay, so maybe that too has not come to mind. Yeah. We should put an upper limit so that we don't have... we have seen some places, they are literally being... Yeah. They can't do anything where they want to be president. What happens to these people? Yeah. Musa Abatua says that the Constitution Review Committee has done a remarkable work and deserve commendation. However, my only point of departure is a proposal to extend the presidential term to 5 years. Okay, this is a big problem for many people. And again, why, Oliver, many people are looking at these. Meanwhile, the report is enormous with various other sectors of the society.
Now, you see, when you're putting out the document, you always have to gamble as to what it is going to do the heavy lifting for the document. And so when you have, for instance, and that was the conversation around, even for us, for Article 71, there are certain things that are so popular with the public that if you gave that to them, the vast majority of people would not read the report, but would have a feeling of goodwill towards the report just because there was something that reflects something that is of significance. So I think that's kind of what we are caught in this conversation, that we can see that the public debate around this is that we're not very keen on the 5 years, and for which reason it is coloring the way in which they're viewing the document. But I think that there's a lot more there. And one of the good things as well is that the conversations around the change in terms of how they want to do this, that if we agreed for how they want to amend the Chapter 25, and we go for a referendum on only that, the question is kicked to Parliament to debate it and whether or not they approved that change to the 5 years. So it doesn't solve the issue. They must approve it by 75% of parliamentarians voting in favor of that change. So I think that practically, I think that will struggle to even go through. But if that doesn't go through, it doesn't mean that all the other things will not get play. But yeah, that's
I'm hearing you suggest that the innovative amendment procedures that they are introducing, if we got that and took that to a referendum, and we got that passed at the referendum, the rest of the entrenched provisions that have to be dealt with, you will not have a problem because a good number of them will be dealt with by Parliament. You don't need to go to a referendum.
Absolutely.
And the problem is that, like your report, you had over 41 or so of the proposed amendment being entrenched provisions, which brought the problem. Are you going to go to the people one by one for 41 times for a referendum? You can't do that in a day.
Absolutely. No. And that's one of the things they're hoping for, is that there's a lot of horse trading that is going to happen within Parliament itself. Because when you take the Chapter 25, the amendment procedure to referendum, that's it. If the people vote in favor of that, all the changes must go through Parliament.
Yeah. Okay.
Every conversation, every discussion must go through Parliament. The only innovation they introduce an innovation here is the inbuilt requirement that Parliament must have road shows, which is the town halls, which are integrated into the amendment procedure. Right. That doesn't exist within the non-entrenched provisions currently now. So as far as this is concerned, once the people approve, all the discussion, all the changes go through Parliament. It's just different thresholds within Parliament. So the minority then can say, this is what, in fact, in my opinion, makes the minority very powerful, irrespective of how small they are.
That's right.
Because there's no way you can be able to meet the thresholds that is required for amendment without the minority being a part of
a referendum. For a referendum.
Also for a referendum. For the changes that has to happen. 75%.
Yes,
it's 75% for the bulk of the recommendations. Sure. Meaning that there's no way the NDC alone can run roughshod and say we are changing everything without them. And in fact, even for the non-entrenched where they need to 66, well, you're not going to get, though if you're going to go your own way on those ones, then we're not going to give you critical changes for the ones where you require 75. This is the horse trading I'm talking about, that there has to be a lot of compromise that has to come in terms of how...
So my next question to you is that from where you sit and the benefit of what you have done before, is it possible to have this done and dusted in 2026?
I think absolutely.
It's possible?
I think it's absolutely possible. I mean, you have 6 months for the entrenched part. You have six months from publication in the Gazette to when the question can be put, and then the timeline for voting. We can vote in December next year. But throughout this process, You can kickstart the process for the non-entrenched elements of that. You can have the bill, you can have the discussions, you can have a certain consensus built around several of the things. But I think to be more realistic, I think we need about 18 months window. But if you really want to fit them within 2026, you can fit them within 2026.
Prof, are you fatigued? We've gone back and forth. And from the voices that are coming up, do you get a sense that this is the one report that you will have minority and majority rally around and not give us too much problem? And the conversations that if we lose it now, we may have lost it forever because of the fact that President Mahama is in a peculiar place. He will superintend it but not benefit.
That's right.
He's in an advantage position.
Precisely.
Parliament, you also have a majority that can do the non-entrenched provisions without problems, so to speak, even though they should still be consensus.
Right. You see, this report could not have come at a better time. Because it seems to me, from all angles, this is it. Most of these proposals, but we've been making advocacy for it for years.
True.
So they are not new to us. The problem has been the political courage with which the executive will lead this. Even the first one, the Fiajo proposals, you know that the executive kind of was not too certain, changing certain proposals that were even more popular than other things. This time around, I think first, by the nature of the composition of the committee, I think people have expressed some trust in the people who put it together, one. So there's some credibility to the committee itself. Two, the president has shown real interest, commitment. And as you just said, he's not going to benefit from it. It's just like Amika Cabral used a term some decades ago, committing class suicide. In other words, you have the power, and somebody is telling you, I'm going to take it away. You see it going to slide away, and all you do. So yes, I agree. The power should leave my hands. And that's what I see Mahama's position to be. And that's advantageous to us. So I think this time around, after 3 or so attempts, and everybody will agree that after 30 years of moving on with a constitutional review, this is the time.
Politicians are selfish. Is he going to be thinking about he, as a man with credibility, wanting this for the future and as a legacy? And is he able to do that without his party's support? His party people are going to say, you're going to let them elect MMDCs.
Yes.
This is the place that we will put our own people there.
Yes.
You're going to lose the power to appoint XYZ. This is where we will put our party people when they struggle to give us power. We don't allow these things to happen. How to appoint Chief Justice and judges. And you're going to lose control over it. You know, all of these things.
Samson, again, we make a very powerful point here. And again, that brings to mind the situation in Mexico decades ago in the 60s. There was one political party that had been in power for about 40 years. They got a president who said, look, I'm going to ensure we change this system because this system is retarding progress. The party opposed, he championed it. And in fact, he knew he would lose the upcoming elections. But for the sake of the nation, he moved on and lost the elections. And now Mexico has a thriving democracy. So in the same way, I want to think that President Mahama may see himself as that. They are going to lose a lot if they don't manage it well. But if you are placing the nation, the interests of the people ahead, then why do you worry about losing power in that respect? If you believe strongly that what you are going to give to the nation will be an enduring and vibrant and progressive democratic system.
So Bafa, I'll come to you. Relax a bit for me, you and Inusa. Vicky, there's already this political talk going on, partisan talk going on. The 1992 Constitution was given to us by NDC, so to speak. Another, constitution from an electoral democracy to a developmental democracy is going to be given to us by NDC. Some celebration. Then you hear some people say, this is why the NPP should have pursued some of these vigorously and give us these kinds of legacies.
Yes, I mean, you know.
It's going to create problems for the two parties, right? I'm not supporting you, not on the value, but because you are going to take credit for it.
But you know, if a party is not supporting another party, so I guess in this case we only have two, right? If MPP decides not to support NDC because of party partisan views or party political stances or views or whatever, then obviously it will not be a good thing for us. I would like to think that the parliamentarians can rise, in certain situations, can rise above their own party political stance. And this thing concerns the Constitution of the Republic. It is not a small exercise.
The NDC, the party people, this is the way they are thinking. They have benefited and they are going to exit, and supposing the NPP wins power, it doesn't have the opportunity to do the things it would have done for its own members, put them in all over the places on boards and things. It won't be able to do it again. But the NDC has enjoyed it.
Yes, but isn't that why we are in the quagmire we're in as a nation? I mean, we are where we are because of all these nepotistic appointments and appointing people who, frankly, some of these people have no business being where they are. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. So you end up in a situation where very few are appointed through a real meritocracy. And most people, or a lot of people, a good portion of people, are appointed purely because of these kinds of things that you're talking about, Samson. And it's killing us as a nation. It really is killing us. So if we are now moving from this situation into a situation where we can now be poised for developing our nation, because the systems and the structures that are now being put in place and being protected constitutionally will enable us to do so, then we should do so. You know, if we keep looking at, oh, they've just appointed, 2,000 people and they could put this one there, these people followed me in my campaign and I have to reward them and all that. If we keep looking at life in that way, we will never progress as a nation. Never.
You were saying there shouldn't be a white paper. Is that what you're suggesting?
Oh, yes. I think
these projects are always terminate with a white paper.
First of all,
my question only is, if we agree that the project is the collective will of the people, how dare the executive, a few of them, come and cherry pick, oh, we want this, we don't want that, this one, do it a different way. Prosafia Joe's report. Yeah. For example, they suggested that, and there are low-hanging stuff in this report, so people are not paying attention yet. They suggested that the detention period, which is 42 hours, that it should be brought to 24 hours. It's not new to Ghana, but the white paper said, no, let's keep it at 42 hours, 48 hours, 2 days. The DC elections, they brought the report, then they said, the white paper said, oh, let's do it this way. Yeah. Let the president be the one to nominate X number of people to be voted for. So it's the same that the president people you are going to vote for.
So, Samson, I mean, these examples you are giving gives us a clear indication why the Fiajo report could not be implemented. It lost credibility in the eyes of Ghanaians. Because they are going around sampling the views of Ghanaians on what should be done to our constitution. And Ghanaians gave them the views. They synthesized the views and produced recommendations. Then somebody was now pretending over the recommendation. That's why we should learn from that experience. That let's give these recommendations that have come out, democratic legitimacy. And how do we do that? We send it back to the people. Give the recommendations to the people. We are now debating some aspects of the recommendation.
And our debate and commentary will inform how people react. Yeah. So you are giving it some democratic legitimacy. Secondly, Fair Judge was a commission established under the Constitution, which said that the government will issue a white paper. That's what the Constitution says. No, this is a committee. Yeah. It's not a commission. This is a committee. So you don't need to import the provisions of the provisions of the Constitution to define and inform how the president acts in this particular case. This is a committee.
In interpretation, the committee commissions are not exactly different when it comes to the need for a white paper. It's only the powers they assume that are different.
What I'm saying is that, yes, or interpretation, but this is a committee. And the committee...
No. Let me intervene.
Yes.
Because the difference is not, well, it's not only in the name, whether it's a commission of inquiry or not, but whether or not it was set up under the Constitution.
Yes.
It wasn't. The Fiajo one was set up under
the Constitution.
So there was a constitutional obligation to publish a white paper.
Yeah. Okay.
In this case, it wasn't.
It doesn't.
And so it's a matter of choice whether or not you want to react to. But even in fact, there's no need to do that.
Yeah, there's no need to do that.
Okay. Actually, the president...
So let's do this quickly. Do you expect that there should be a white paper? Oliver, do you expect a white paper?
My position before was that there shouldn't be.
There shouldn't be.
But now, I think that a white paper can intervene to enhance the credibility, which is that if, looking at the extent of the recommendations that were made, people are bogged down by the question of 4 or 5 years, I would issue a white paper and say the president does not agree with a 5-year extension, but we are endorsing the entirety of the report.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes,
that for me would work.
Should there be a white paper?
I think that the government should react to it. And if it has to react to it by white paper, nothing stops it. Because in my view, there are several other proposals here which should not be part of a constitution. I'll give you an example. For instance, there's a proposal that says that there should be time limit for investigations that, cannot be addressed in
investigations of criminal prosecution.
Exactly. But look, even as I go on, let me say this. When I said that I historically had the appetite for constitutional amendment, but now I hold a different view, you seem to have said that it was contradictory. No, I qualified it. I said that my position has been moderated by age, experience that I've had.
Okay, just like President Akufo-Addo.
Sure.
When he was foreign minister, I was with him once at the airport in Kumasi, and he said the constitution has to be overhauled.
Yes.
That's the word.
Subsequently, he was so against the overhauling.
The challenges that come with the amendment itself should tell you that an amendment should not be an easy meal. The challenges that come, it tells you that an amendment is not meant to be a walk in the park. Look, my brother made a proposal as to how we can approach this by amending Article 25. I'm concerned about that. Look at what's happening in Togo, right? Gradually, they took away the fetters. And the next thing is that now they are restricting the way to elect their president. Now it's restricted to the Parliament of Togo. And so I'm always guided by...
But it's not a wholesale. Because the core foundations of the Constitution, they say it ought to be left as entrenched, requiring a referendum.
No, Samson, I'm only giving you why I'm always careful from experience. The Bible says that when I was a child, I thought like a child. But when I became an adult, I've had a lot of experience in the last 7-10 years. And it's giving me a different perspective. Look, all that we are saying, we look at this, it's on paper, it's beautiful. Some of them are beautiful. But we forget that it's aspirational, right? That this is going to lead us here, this is going to lead us there. But I look at what is here and what has worked elsewhere. We are talking about decoupling parliament from the executive.
Right.
Go to the United Kingdom. Over 300 years of democracy, executive, parliament married together. Okay?
That, you don't need to cite that example.
I'm coming. Oh,
So
let
when
me finish.
Montesquieu was writing about separation of powers,
No.
he did not think that Britain was a good example of separation of powers.
Wait.
And separation of powers is
Wait.
strongly in our constitution.
You see, separation of powers, as we have come to know it and learned in our constitutional law class, is an academic study.
It is not.
Wait, what is in practice and has delivered jobs, has delivered housing, has reduced corruption, right? Has delivered health care to the people. A classic case is Britain. 300 years of democracy. Almost every appointee, almost every appointee is a member of parliament. Wait,
That's the
no.
future.
Then you are talking. No, wait. You allow me to finish. No. I'm giving you an example. Go to Singapore. Go to Singapore. Singapore is your class. Wait. But I'm giving you examples.
No, these are
Wait, my brother. Wait. Even the prime minister is part of parliament.
It's a prime minister.
Wait. What doesn't stop anything? What does it change?
It's a different architecture.
Wait. Look. Wait.
We tried it and we jettisoned it.
Samson. If my
Okay, go.
Look, what are we looking for? What problem are we looking to solve? We are looking at oversight, right? The Westminster system, government collapses within a year. Oversight.
Within a week.
Oversight. The height of oversight. The backbench, so powerful. Today, as we sit here, for close to 6 months, Keir Starmer has been sitting on tenterhooks. He's afraid his government is going to collapse any day. Does it happen in America? It doesn't. Where there is a clear separation of powers, it doesn't. Yet I'm saying that in Britain, executive, legislature married together.
The people and the culture is also important,
Wait,
right?
I'm coming. I'm coming.
It's not the people and the culture. It's the system.
I am coming. I am coming. What do you want? No. So I will tell you that from my experience, a lot of the things we are discussing in terms of ensuring parliamentary oversight, we can do them with the standing orders of parliament to ensure proper oversight.
This parliament?
Wait, Samson, it doesn't matter. Samson, what you need, okay, this parliament, let's stay there, this parliament. So there's clear separation of powers with this parliament. What do you expect from it? That it can oversee and scrutinize the executive, this parliament? That's your question. This parliament. And so if it is...
but you're arguing against yourself here. Because
no, I'm not. I am not. He is saying that this parliament, supposing that, even with proper tweaking of the standard orders, it is not fit to ensure proper...
No, you were referencing Britain. And what my point about them is that they don't even have a written constitution.
Yet
they have customs that they have built over time.
Yet it works.
And it works for them.
Yet it works.
Okay? But here, we have a written constitution. We can't even seem to... We abuse it. So the people make bad or good a constitution.
So what you have...
The fundamental misconception.
Right.
Samson, go to Singapore.
No.
It's not a simple...
It's a fundamental misconception.
No, it is not.
I need them to make their interventions.
If I don't finish...
Everybody else has their hands up.
Yeah. Something if I don't finish, my point...
You're not going to finish.
Why? If you go to Singapore...
Again, wrong example.
Every minister...
It's a wrong example.
Why is this wrong example?
Because the system is different.
Exactly. So that is why I am saying...
Now you compare...
If you choose the Ghanaian system, I'll tell you why the Ghanaian system wouldn't work. I'll tell you in 1 minute. He knows that it will be difficult for the parliament, for the party in parliament to go against the executive. He knows. Because the partisanship is so strong that he wouldn't want to do anything that will lead to collapse of his party. 2, he knows that the executive president, because he has the resources.
Oliver is saying your arguments are self-defeating.
No, it's not. It's not. I'm telling you that the proposal of decoupling the executive from parliament is not self-defeating if he's listening well. I'm giving you the, if it is the objective that we want to ensure proper oversight, I've given you instances where the executive is fully together with the legislature, but there is oversight. And you have raised the question as to whether this parliament can do it. And I'm saying that if we have the right standing orders, parliament be able to do it. Okay. But be that as it may, in my conclusion, the point is that, Samson, if you are not careful, right, we'll be chasing the utopia to destroy ourselves. Because he knows that the executive, if he realizes that if you're a parliamentarian and you are not for him, the next thing you will lose your seat. He knows, because the executive has the resources. He controls national security. And so what we are chasing, we may not be able to achieve them with the decoupled parliament.
Prof. Oliver and Vicky all want to say something. Yes. So let me start from Oliver, because he was making a direct, contradiction to him. Okay. Meanwhile, Kwame Sapon says that on the issue of total separation of powers, understand the MP. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas. Show me one broiler chicken. Happy Thursday was bronya. Merry Christmas.
No, you see, and I've heard this argument so many times about the fact that when you go to the UK system, members of parliament are also part of the executive, and yet it functions. But one of the things we have done with this hybrid system is that we've essentially taken the worst of both worlds and married them. Because the reason why that system functions is because of the fact that parliament can collapse a government. And for which reason the government is perpetually tied to parliament's vote of no confidence. In this case, we don't have it. It doesn't exist at all. In fact, within the current constitution, if parliament votes on to censure a minister, the president doesn't need to remove the minister.
Now they have improved that. And they say when that happens, that minister should go.
A proposal. Yeah. So as the current parliament exists now, all the things that made the system work in other parts have been taken away. When we went back to 69, the contemplation in 69 was that we were going to have a president, and certain institutions were tied to the president, which were considered to be guarantors of the democracy. So whether it's the NCC or all those things, were tied to the presidency, separate from the government. Yeah. Because there was a distinction between what formed the government and what was the presidency. Yeah. When we came to this from 79 and like this, we collapsed all of that into one body. And so essentially, we have built a system where all the processes that allow parliament to be able to control even an executive that exists, the idea that a Liz Truss can come in and within 3 weeks loses it, none of that exists now. Now you're saying that, okay, let us keep that system in place. But somehow what the constitution cannot achieve by making parliament own up to that power, we can do so by parliament doing that through its own standing orders. How would the standing orders
going to work?
Yes, Prof. Yes, Prof.
I think Oliver has said it more brilliantly than I can say, because the comparison that you're making with the British system, it's not the British system. Even Singapore is not our kind of system. Singapore has a special system for its own context. And they have developed the discipline with which they function. So they don't even have exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's a wrong comparison that I think you have.
Singapore doesn't have it. They don't have it.
Yeah. Wait. Yeah.
They can come, but I cannot.
Because you spoke for quite a while, and I allowed it for a purpose.
They kept interrupting.
Yeah, but it makes the conversation beautiful. It's a conversation we are having.
It should be a fundamental question.
Yes, you have made that point.
Fundamental question. And it's oversight. And I've given you examples.
Have that oversight.
It's not. It's not simply about.
Let's give you another example.
There's one thing I share with Bafo, though, which Pollard Moshri continues to insist. I suppose he made the presentation to this committee as well, where there can be a question time, where the president must show up in parliament.
Like in South Africa.
That is a parliamentary system.
We don't have. I agree.
Even South Africa.
That's a different system.
Even South Africa. The president is in parliament.
Taking questions. That's correct. That's right.
In South Africa.
I agree with that.
Yes, okay. In fact, that brings me to one of the groups that you seem to have supported about proportional representation. Yes. They've lost it.
So that's one of the things, that I am perhaps a bit displeased about. Because in terms of how when you follow the logic of the Constitution, the committee, and what they wanted to make Parliament of, I think that the Parliament system can be reformed And I was a big supporter of the proportional representation. I think
There's
that they bring more diverse
representation,
some diverse interests into Parliament. No, they're not.
No, again, how can Parliament oversight?
So
the
I was suggesting a mixed method. I mean, that's what we
Right. So explain to our viewers what is proportional representation.
So the thinking here is that one of the things we have been looking to unblock is the winner takes all politics. So that when you have, I'll come to that. So when you have, in terms of the Parliament, when somebody goes to presidential elections and has a certain percentage of the general vote, a percentage of that will be reflected in terms of parliamentary representation. So, for instance, if a smaller party went and got 13% or 5%, then the composition of parliament will represent the fact of what they did there. The idea is to be able to enhance more diversity within the parliamentary representation. When you look at from 1992, we had more independent members of parliament. Now, slowly, the practice is dying out because the nature of the presidential system is that it devolves into a two-party horse race consistently across board. And so that's what we were hoping for, that will change the nature of
And how do you achieve that if those people are not elected by a popular vote?
So one of the things that our recommendation was that we have the mixed method. So the mixed method is that you reduce the number of electoral constituencies. So let's say 125 people are elected directly from constituencies. And then there's a mixture that we have the party list, where based on your percentage that you get in the polls, then you get that represented in Parliament. So it's a mixed method of who is coming in.
Right.
Then you can then set even some of the representational issues that it attempts to deal with in terms of the women and other groups, that legislation would then specify and require that in terms of the party list that comes forward, whatever proportion that is coming to win, 50% of them must be or must not be of the same gender. We need people who are representative of a particular class. You can be able to fix all those representational issues within the body of Parliament.
Okay, thank you. Bafo was pointing us to
there's
a portion where the committee appears to suggest proportional representation.
Page 27.
Page 27.
To enhance opportunities for women, youth, and other politically marginalized groups, including smaller political parties, to gain representation in Parliament. The committee endorses proportional representation and recommends to government to commission an independent study and investigations of the suitability of proportional representation for Ghana. But somebody sends a test.
No, but it's not
They're not proposed.
They're not
proposing.
They're not proposing. They endorse. They recommend.
Work in progress.
It's to commission an independent study.
Work in progress.
This is really not actionable. All right. Yes,
somebody
Vicky.
sends a test. Says that a member of Parliament. He says that, hey, Honorable Inusa Fuseni, you've been a minister. You don't want other MPs to be ministers.
Yes, Vicky.
Self-interest.
I'm against that because I know. And President Kufuor eloquently said that in the go and read the 5th January 2009 report. You can't be a jack of all trades. You can't be a full-time minister and also a full-time
parliamentarian.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
You've seen that because you're out of it now.
Yes.
I mean, of course, Nana will make the argument he's making because he has a vested interest. And I also think that you are comparing apples with pears with the various examples you gave because the systems are different. In terms of making the point about Keir Starmer being hot right now because he's afraid of it. It's got nothing to do with this executive legislature thing, nothing at all. It's because of reform, the surge of, reform in Britain and the movement to the right. And that is causing a whole wave. And it's not peculiar to Britain, it's across the whole European continent. So it's got nothing to do with that. And also, their system is not fraud-proof. They are in the middle of investigating an £11.9 billion fraud that was perpetrated under the Boris Johnson administration during the COVID era. So I don't think those things are applicable to us here.
All right. I'll take a quick break here. I'll be right back. My guests have been Victoria Bright, Oliver Bakavomawa, Professor Ajuman Bafo, Bafo Ajimandria, Inusa Fuseni, and Nana Ejay Bafo Ewa. Earlier, you had Professor Kwesi Prempeh and Charlotte Osei. who don't know about government WhatsApp. It tells you how busy they have been, so they don't follow all the mundane stuff happening around town. We'll be right back. Come back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. We'll just have brief comments to conclude this, and then we'll talk about oral, whether it's just political prosecution or it's genuine, as it were, anti-corruption drive that has been going on. You hear Ajay Bafo on it. Let's now share just a couple of your comments with you. Okay, so someone is asking if you set up the independent ethics and anti-corruption, commission, what will happen to OSP? Yes, in the report it is there. OSP will now collapse into the ethics and anti-corruption body. Kwame Baswa says that do assembly members also get 5 years? How about proper decentralization? I'm not in support of the election of MMDCEs or MCEs. It will be chaotic. Chiefs and influential people will hijack the assembly. Areas with huge population will also get candidates elected as its assembly elections. Okay, then you are too late to the party, because the Afrobarometer report and surveys that have been done over the years have been consistent. Almost about 80% of Ghanaians want an election. And that's why we're questioning the phased-in approach that the committee is proposing. This one says that Gamel from Awutu Abrachre says, I believe President Kufuor set this committee. President Mills set it. No, President Kufuor didn't set it. He began the processes to want to have it, but he couldn't do it, and Mills came to set it up. And then he said President Mahamadou has set it, Akufo-Addo has set up, and then President Mahamadou has set it up. They all brought out a report and recommendation, and none has been implemented. Ghanaians need action. We need one to make sure the reports are taking effect. You are right about that. Jake has a rather tall one, but let me see if I can read it. It says, I support Yunus of Husseini and Nana Ajay Bafo Awards submission on the extension of the tenure of the president's term. Okay, it's actually term, but it also affects the tenure of the president from 4 to 5 years. We are assuming that every president is a good person and wish well for the country. We have seen presidents in the past that have depleted the national kitty and caused so much pain to the citizens before leaving. The citizens wish they could remove the president before his tenure ended, yet they had to painfully endure till the president completed his term. I am not convinced about the answer by Professor Kwesi Prempeh that the people are unlikely to renew the president's mandate when he performs badly in 5 years. The tenure should not be informed by likelihood of renewal, but rather the sustainability of the democracy. We don't want people to give flimsy excuses to overthrow government in this country by citing reasons such as this. Okay, so if you have 5 years, it may cause people to want to overthrow a government they are tired with. Okay, that's why I was suggesting maybe they should look at the impeachment proceedings. If they can reduce the threshold, it may also be helpful. Okay, thanks for those messages. Master Planner Junior, policy analyst Kintampo, he says, reducing the age from 40 to 30 is very important and good for us as a nation. We have so many young, brilliant people below age 40 that can change the fortunes of this country, and age shouldn't be an impediment. On the issue of 5 years for the president, it's insignificant. Whether 4 or 5 years, there wouldn't be so much change. The president will even wish for 6 years if we change it to 5 years. All right? Okay, so maybe we'll come to catch up. That's what we are used to. When all others have done it 5 years, then we'll come and play catch up. Or we may just leave it like that. Okay, so what will be your very concluding comments in a minute? Then we move on to oral for the next 20, 30 minutes. Yes, Prof, let's begin with you.
Good on our ways.
So now there's going to be an implementation committee.
Oh, yes.
You have also suggested that you don't want any white paper to cherry pick around it, but Oliver disagrees that you can use it to advantage.
Yes.
Yeah. So what will be your final comments on
I think, first of all, I do believe that there's a real political commitment from the executive level to this process, and therefore I'm very hopeful that even if there's a white paper, it won't be to obstruct the process, but perhaps to enhance it and to propel it further for the implementation committee to start its work. There are a few things that are very important, at least for me, which have been deferred by this committee. Because you haven't even discussed this whole notion of devolution of power and the role that chiefs ought to play at the local level.
Yeah, they discuss it.
They discuss it, but it's been deferred to the devolution committee.
That's correct, commission.
Exactly. So for me, perhaps that's one area that in the future we'll have to, and when we get to the implementation level, we have to really be serious about. Other than that, I think that overall I'm very satisfied with the process. I'm very happy with the proposals. Of course, I've expressed some reservations about certain proposals, but the way it is and the popular enthusiasm that I sense amongst the public, not only from the reports you're getting from the audience, but also across board. You hear people expressing some delight about this. So let's hold on to the momentum, and I'm hoping that among the legacies that a future former President Mahama will recall will be supervising over the renewal of our constitutional democracy by reviewing this constitution. That's
real legacy, right?
Yes.
To leave a constitution behind.
So.
Yes, Oliver.
Yeah, let me take the legacy point. I mean, I think if this is to be the president's legacy, then it means that he must superintend the process even more closely.
That's right.
So to show all the right signals at this point is well and good, but the next point of carrying it across to the finish line is perhaps the most important aspect of what the process is. I'm hoping that 7th January, which was, I don't know whether it's still Constitution Day, that is an announcement from the presidency in terms of what the pathway forward is. Whether that looks like an implementation process. Hopefully that retains some of the members of the existing committee. I say this because when CRC finished, we had the implementation committee that had absolutely nothing to do with the old one. Some of us had to spend over months with them, trying to hold them and give them a sense of why we're going in a particular direction. I hope there's a mixed process. I hope there's a mixed, and perhaps even international, with international partners on board, drafting committee that translates these recommendations into drafting language so we're able to see the process. I hope that the presidency is involved and we can know somebody who is leading that process from the presidency as well and helping engage Parliament on the way forward. I think that I know that, for instance, the MPP has appointed a committee to look into this. I want Parliament itself to have a committee that studies and thinks about the way forward, so that we don't retreat into partisan echo chambers.
That's right.
But that there's a joint way forward about this. Because I genuinely believe that if Parliament sits together with this document, they will see that there's way more in it for them that liberates Parliament, and I think I'm hoping that that's kind of what I want to see by 7th of January.
Funding problems. They have told us initially if they were going to wait for President Mahama to set up his government, they would have started late. Yeah. They had to go looking for funding from partners to begin the process, waiting for the government to now have its budget and so on. Your committee had a similar situation.
Challenge as well.
Eventually, when you finished, you were told that everything valued was about $6.3 million US. The funding.
Yeah. So the funding is very interesting because time and time again we've seen government set up committee. In fact, I think the original mandate was 60 days 2 months, right?
Yeah.
For this committee to work. By which time they're not been given a penny by the government. So we see this happen over and over. And I think that commitment on 7th January from the presidency, that there has to be financial commitment that backs the process. We need to evaluate what it would cost to be able to have the conversation, to resource the NCC, to lead the conversation in public education, for the Electoral Commission to begin the framework of what a referendum would look like and how we want that to set up, because I've had certain engagements, and I tell you, there's so much even in terms of how we should ask the questions at the referendum. The questions as to whether or not we can hold it over a couple of days. The questions of whether or not we can do it electronically. The questions as to whether or not we need to translate it. How do you deal with people with disability to be able to go and vote? Are there going to be the tactile for blind people to be able to read? So these are all questions that means that we must already get on the front foot on this. And I'm sincerely hoping that these are things that we prioritize.
Yes, Bafo, you have worked with this at the personal level. You have been invited to make your contributions at the level of the parliament with your group. You have also met the committee, done your stuff, and now a report has been presented, summary. The complete report that you desire will also be submitted. And I realize that you have read it a lot more thoroughly, thoroughly than most of us may have done. What are you looking at? Finishing the marathon. So
we must finish, but I expect the government to react to it, and it must be the most critical part of it, the most crucial, that will transform our constitution and not just anything. For instance, there is a provision in here about intersex. The fact that a child born intersex will not have the situation corrected, right, unless it borders on a matter of life and death. In summary, that's what it is. We know that these things can be an opening for the entrance of LGBT.
Do you want to read
I completely
it? Because it's very controversial.
I think because I was part of those conversations as well, and I know that the question of the intersex is about the physical.
But why must it be in a constitution?
Go to it and let's read.
Go to it and let's read.
Because the children's rights should be dealt with by a Children's Act.
Sorry,
it must
the
be dealt with by a Children's Act.
But for the Constitution Review Commission, the Constitution Review Commission has said that the subject should be left to the Supreme Court.
No. Oh, come on.
You want to sneak this into the Constitution?
No. But for can you do this? Can you do this?
Actually, let me.
Before we throw up something that becomes the topic that overshadows the discussion, can we go to the specific?
No, wait. Samson.
Let's go for the specific. Whilst you're looking for it, let me go to Vicky. Yes.
So
it's been midwife up to this point. How do we?
I think that if the president can pull it off in a way which transforms, that strengthens our institutions and transforms the landscape, the current landscape for development, it would be a good legacy for him. Now, I mean, various comments have been made about various aspects, and I'll just mention maybe 2 or 3 of them. The 30-year limit, I agree with it.
Let's Vicky finish.
The 30-year limit, I agree with it, because the world has changed a lot since our Constitution was written. And if you look at people who are making impact, not just in their countries, but globally, a lot of them are very, very young. So, and also our own demographics, most of our population are youthful people. So I think they need to be given the opportunity to represent us. If you can present yourself as a 30-year-old to Ghanaians and they vote for you, then you obviously have what it takes. The 10-year term for EC, the EC, and then the 2 proposed new deputies, I think what I'll say about that is that letting them all go at once is a problem. I think we will have to stagger their tenure, because if we don't do, elections are not episodic. They are cumulative and they develop over time. So that whole institutional knowledge cannot just be swept out at once. So if we allow the top leadership to go, then we will have a problem. And I think that for me, we've already talked about the 5-year term and all of that. One thing I like is the fact that the people are now going to be given a right a constitutional right to participate in legislation making. And this is something that's not peculiar. It's not saying that Parliament must make laws by referendum, no. Referenda, no. It's just allowing people to actually practice the democracy that we all preach. And it's not peculiar to Ghana. Other countries do it all the time, and it has worked for them. So I think all in all, for me, these are the key things that I would say.
All right, so now let's go to chapter 6.
Okay. So Article 28 should be amended to provide for the right of...
So let our viewers follow us because it's controversial.
Yes.
This is in chapter 6 at page what?
105.
105.
105.
Thank you.
105.
And
104, 105.
that's right.
Okay.
And what has necessitated this, because you went to Vicky, must be revisited. I said that the president should issue a white paper to react to some of the things in here so that we know whether he accepts it or not. There ought to be widespread education so that the citizens also know what they are voting for.
Right.
One of them is this. Article 28 should be amended to provide for the right of every child to bodily integrity, including freedom from irreversible, non-consensual, medical or surgical interventions that are not strictly necessary to preserve life or prevent serious and immediate harm, that the best interest of the child shall override social, cosmetic, cultural, or expediency-based justification for invasive medical procedures for protection for intersex children. It means that as a parent, when I have an intersex child, I don't even have a right to determine whether or not the situation should be normalized until the child grows up to make that decision. Parents should know what they are going to vote for in this referendum. And so the president should react to this. If he accepts it, then the people of Ghana will know that the president has accepted this. But what they have to know is that in many countries, this becomes the foundation for certain things. And that should be known. Going forward, let me finish with my submission. Samson, also...
It was supposed to be a minute's conclusion. Go ahead.
Samson, thank you very much. You're far too kind. We need to appreciate that when you talk of government oversight, it is not like litigation where somebody must win and somebody should lose. It is, cooperation, relationship building by the executive and all the other arms of government. For instance, recently, we saw Honorable Mahama Ayariga and my very good friend, Eche Dafia Mopo, say that they want to use a private member's bill to abolish the OSP. The president then said, I am requesting that you withdraw that position. That is cooperation between the executive and the legislature, right? And that oversight should not be war. And we shouldn't think that oversight, because we haven't seen that somebody is holding the neck of the executive, oversight is not happening.
Okay.
There have been instances where oversight has happened under the current regime. Look, under President Rawlings's regime, just before he left power, two Supreme Court nominees were rejected by Parliament. If you recall, I've forgotten their name.
Are you on the
Intersex
thing?
So thank you.
Let's look at a constitution. Let's look at, we need a constitution that will foster cooperation between all arms of government.
Right.
And not
That's
one
fair.
that is cast in cement.
Oh, that's fair.
You understand?
Okay, thank you.
If you don't mind.
Yes,
Because
I really mind. I wanted you to. Yeah.
Because the issue here is that the incidence of intersex children, which are children who are born where it is not immediately discernible whether they are male or female, is something that happens by nature.
Yes.
What we are seeing is that people, for cultural reasons, afraid of stigma, go and force surgeries on these children. When, later on in life, there are people who, because maybe they are male, or later on the male parts will become more prominent later on, were forced, and vaginal, canals were then constructed for them, which obstruct the ability to even urinate, and all things which are damaging of the individual, We're saying that these are medical decisions that must be made, not parents using cultural basis to demand for surgeries to be imposed on children. So that's what this provision
And that should be in the Constitution.
Okay.
No, you should read what the Constitution says. Hold on. It says here.
First of all,
Okay, wait, let him read. Read it again.
Recommends targeted constitutional amendments affecting Articles 28, 50, and 30 of the Constitution, together with mandatory consequential legislative duties imposed on Parliament as follows. So that's what it's saying, that what it is doing, that it is requiring 28 to clarify and give a mandate to Parliament.
You need,
which we have done consistently.
Okay. Legislative.
First of all,
legislation will be enough. It shouldn't be the Constitution.
Thank
That's
you.
the point I'm making.
Thank you.
First of all,
thank you. Yes, it's your turn.
From the discussion and the disclosure, you need to get our listeners to understand that there was no attempt, deliberate or by accident, to import into the constitutional amendment.
But it is there.
No.
It is there.
Nana, please. Yes, Inusa, let's hear.
Import into the constitution the LGBT.
He said so.
That's what he said. There's no doubt. Secondly, you are looking at the protection of the interests of the child. Fundamental. And the protection is going to manifest itself in a way as to prevent invasive attacks on the personality or nature of a child by parents. So, like this man has, Oliver has said, this is supposed to be a medical decision. And so, what the committee is recommending is that the Children's Act be amended to reflect that. So, there must not be an invasive attack on the personality of a child at birth. And you can understand it when you put it side by side with female genital mutilation. You can understand it that way. So it is not LGBT.
Right.
So let me conclude. So His Excellency John Dramani Mahama must own.
So actually, if anything at all,
yes,
this is actually the opposite.
What is that, actually?
Okay, against LGBT activity.
Yeah.
It prevents any trans.
Yeah, I'm reading and asking a question. Anna, please.
Spin on it.
No, I'm not putting a spin.
No, it's allowed to put a spin on it.
I'm not putting a
what
spin.
I'm saying is that
This is interpretation.
first of all, John Dramani Mahama, the president, must own it. If he actually intends that this be part of his legacy and must drive the process.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, and it must be inclusive. It must cut across partisan political lines. He must get people to support the process. And he must do it with some level of intentionality. That's right. You say, we must own the Constitution. This is what the first provision after the Universal Creed, we the people, in exercise of our inalienable rights. So all of us must invest in the process. And John Dramani Mahama must lead it. Vicky, you were not at the Jimpa 2 years ago. I was there at the Law Week celebration. And the students said that there was a fundamental fallacy in our Constitution. That wisdom and knowledge resided in only the agent.
That's scripture.
Yeah, so they said, so we need to address that. Before even these people came, the Constitution Review Committee was established, they said we needed to address that. And Denmark has shown the way. A 30-year-old has been elected prime minister.
Okay, thank you very much. And this show, as always, is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33+ years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex Tanks, it's strong, it's tough. Activa International Insurance. Our clients are Passion International Facilities Management Association. They are proud to be associated with Newsfile. Safari Valley Eco Park, bringing you closer to nature. Gold Bog Jewelry, pure, precious, proudly Ghanaian, and Koa Natural Juice, 100% cocoa fruit that you need to get. And every Saturday when I sit here, I'm often clothed by Habil's Couture. You can call them 0200 84 1988, 0200 84 1988. They'll give you the best of kaftans. And the holiday season is still on. So if you want to, sew something nice for a friend, for a parent, for a relative, this is how you can go about it. So now, the Attorney General, the day this report was submitted, he had done one of his presses that morning before the report was submitted. And in this, he told us a number of things, that the oral investigations are still ongoing. Those who think that, it is getting stopped somewhere, it's not true. Things are going on, except that when you feel that the things are being delayed, it is not exactly the case. He wants to be painstaking because other institutions are brought into the investigation process. The GRA and other institutions, he actually gave them a warning that if he gives them work and they delay in the next year, they should know that he will come at them. So they should do things fast to help oral to be as fast as it ought to be. Then he made the announcement. Bernard Entry, Boesiakon, issues regarding some, projects that monies have gone from the Exim Bank, is it? And then the Percival Kofi Apolu, founder of the Liberal Party of Ghana, the 2024 presidential candidate, also is going to suffer some charges for fraudulent misrepresentation involving about 3.1 million Ghana cedis. Bernard Boesiakon, the NPP's chairman, Ashanti Region, Wontumi Farms Limited, was highlighted. Also matters of fraudulent misrepresentation involving about 24 million Ghana cedis. So that's about it. Going into the next year, he's going to be filing the charges and so on and so forth. But he's taking a flack again for continuing with these and pronouncing people guilty. Is that really the situation? What shall we do about that? Oliver, you have been sitting on social media, and once in a while, you say you want oral to make you happy by announcing that they have arrested somebody and they are chasing someone. The way they are doing it is being faulted.
From the beginning, I've always said that I'm a big supporter of the press conferences. I'm a big supporter of the level of getting the public interested in what is happening, providing information as to the stage of this authoritative process. I've consistently said, and which is missing so far, that there has to be a dedicated government platform where people can be able to see the stages of the various investigations and reports, and also even in terms of what is happening in the courts, that the public have a right to know and become more interested in this. It's central to how we save the Fourth Republic. I believe that so many people have come to just believe that the Fourth Republic doesn't take enough steps to be able to sanction the political class and in some of the corruption that goes on. So this is to be able to renew faith in the project. Now, that said, I've also consistently been one which said that enough is not being done to build the institutional capacity of the various actors, institutions that are involved in the corruption investigations to be able to enable prosecutions. I don't think that we have the capacity still yet in terms of prosecutorial capacity and investigative capacity to be able to see this through. I've said that, so far you see the fact that the vast majority of the people that we are seeing being talked about are also perhaps political appointees, which is leaving out a critical belt of public officers. And a lot of these things cannot happen without public officer involvement, showing it's already an indication to me that the expanse of the investigative capacity, the expanse of prosecutorial capacity does not currently exist. So these are things that for me, going into the next year, I want to see happen. So far, it hasn't happened. When we see the Attorney General talking about other institutions not need to be able to up their game, it tells me that there's a central problem. That how do you centralize these institutions to work across departments, to work across agencies, to be able to allow these things to happen.
As a defense attorney, are you concerned about what people are raising?
Yeah.
That people are pronounced guilty already, even before they are charged.
Yeah.
You know, as we said, like I mentioned last week, it's almost as if we have concluded that Kenneth Foriata is a thief.
Yeah.
But no court has pronounced him a thief.
Yeah. So this is what I believe. As somebody who has been accused until to this day, a lot of people still believe that I intend to overthrow the government. I understand that the process, no matter how you say it and no matter how you guarantee individual innocence, it never goes away. I understand that. But I do think that there's a balance to be drawn where the public is being informed that investigations, and this is what the investigations have revealed, and that by tomorrow or the next day we have filed charges, that it cannot be so disconnected as to make people create a sense of whether or not this is down for public information purposes or this is an update on prosecutorial actions that are being taken. The AG's role is to prosecute. So people inform us that these are things that have happened, this is what we have uncovered, and for which reason we have filed these charges. For me, that's fine. Now, there's a manner in which you may be able to conduct it that makes people believe whether or not it's a conclusion on the guilt of the individuals or whether or not you have injured the person so much that they cannot be rehabilitated. There's a line to be drawn here. But, and it's interesting that we had talked about, the conversation around Abu Trika backstage and some of this. Institutions released statements which said that the individual, a criminal, has been arrested. There was not a single noise from anybody that said that this person is innocent. And even the process in Ghana does not lead to anything that leads to establishing his guilt. Trial has not even started for him. But state institutions issued statements calling him a notorious criminal. Institutions who have never arrested him in this country, investigated him or reached any conclusion based on somebody saying that we want to file charges on him. But for some reason, our appetite and our remembrance of constitutional guarantee of innocence is the most heightened when it comes to the political class, but not for any other individual. And that, for me, speaks to a particular hypocrisy around this whole conversation. If we are comfortable for anybody else to be so stigmatized, then we should not become strong defenders of the Constitution when it only affects the political class. That's my thinking. So there's a way in which we can discuss individuals and how individuals who are brought into the criminal line. I don't think that the line to be drawn is that the public should not be informed of investigations.
But in informing them, look at the questions that are being raised. How you talk about how deliberately people have attempted to defraud. Yeah. He talks about going to his farm, checking on tractors, invoices, Percival Kofi Palu, how a company, is formed to mimic the other one, and they use that to take money. And people say this evidence should be in the courtroom and not to the public. You poison them against the individuals.
No, you see, the truth is that if all of this, even charges, once filed into the courtroom, become public documents.
That's right.
Everything that you have deposed in there are still not proven, whether or not they have been, whatever it is. And when journalists go, anybody goes to the court and gets those access and publishes them, these are things which will still raise questions about an individual.
Right.
It's not just the press conference bringing light to it that does anything peculiar.
Right.
But for me, and one of the things I always said, for instance, when I was charged, was that the trial never happened. That I never got the opportunity to be able to clear my name.
Right.
And for me, that is where the bigger thing I am interested in. That people who charges are raised against, we need to be able to fast track the process by which...
We ran out of time, Nana. And you see, he has an experience. And there were people who got to me and say, that's your friend there. You see, he's been caught for doing... I said, what has he done? And there were actually people who suggested, you need to dissociate yourself if you want to keep your integrity from him. And I said, what has he done? Has he stolen your money?
Yes. Listen, my first point is that Oliver says that going after former appointees is refreshing because it's a form of accountability. I agree. When you hold political office, you should account. But it's not refreshing, right, unless there is a non-discrimination policy. If you file a nulli prosequa in respect of your party members and go after members of another political party, that is a clear case of witch hunting. That is a clear case of insincere fight against corruption. And the very day the Attorney General did that, he lost the moral authority to fight, to do any genuine prosecution. And I'm not surprised that you can tell some struggle on his part. Look, he comes out to do all these press conferences, but when it comes to disclosures, he's struggling to disclose. If you have such depth of information, which you can present to the public, then you should have the information readily available to disclose to the other side. But you can tell he struggles to do that. That in and of itself is problematic. You see, you mentioned the case of Ken Ofori-Atta. And now he's telling us that Ken Ofori-Atta has gone for good lawyers abroad. Why? You were expecting that Ken Ofori-Atta will not defend himself, right? You expect that he'll go for good lawyers. But that is why you also have to have a watertight case against him. Because it is not in our court where the Attorney General walks in and have his way. It is only in Ghana. It doesn't happen in most of the advanced democracies. And so it's like they are, even with the state attorneys, right? They come in and you realize that there's some lack of preparedness in terms of even disclosure and so on and so forth. But my brother Oliver, I know what you went through. Let me say this to you. Let's be very honest with ourselves. Do you think that you can take the key of a police vehicle from its ignition in any serious country and get away with it?
So that's another debate.
Yes, you can't.
We don't have time.
See, we should not. You can never do that in America.
I didn't get away with it.
Therefore, you've lived in America.
I understand.
You can never take the key to an ignition of a vehicle in America and go scot-free. Okay. They will shoot you. The police will shoot you.
Right.
It's unfortunate. Let's begin to make certain admissions and build this country. You see, we can't, in the name of making sure right things are done, do the wrong thing. It was absolutely wrong.
Thank you. Our time is up. My other guest. I don't know what
the point there is.
We can't be hypocritical.
Okay. My other guest had already suggested, gentlemen, my other guest had already suggested that the two of you should deal with this matter. But I see them putting their hands up, and our time is up. Just 30 seconds, please. Our time is up.
I mean,
what is the truth?
No, that's what you're hoping for.
Yes. Gentlemen, please.
Oral is a central axis of the research agenda. Everybody is acutely aware that before election 2024, many things were happening in this country which simply were unacceptable. The Auditor General's report on the utilization of the covered funds is a case in point. If you are given political office, it's a privilege. And after your tenure, or even during your tenure, if you are called to account, you owe it a duty.
People don't have issues with that. They're asking about the manner in which it is being done. I'm sorry, but
I asked you a question. You wanted the Attorney General just wake up one day and say, I'm prosecuting Wuntumi, or
without informing the public. Okay. My guests have been Victoria Bright, who is an international corporate lawyer and entrepreneur. Oliver Bakavomowo is constitutional rights and policy strategy advisor to the Democracy Hub. He was previously also with the Constitution Review Commission under Professor Fiajo. Professor Bafo Ajumandua is former UN Senior Governance Advisor. Inusa Fuseni is former MP Tamale Central and former Minister Lands and Natural Resources. He was also in charge of roads at a point. Nana Ejay Bafoewa is Vice Chair, Subsidiary Legislation Committee and Member, Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. Have a good afternoon. Merry Christmas.